Good evening and welcome. I'm Bill Maley, Brighton Town Supervisor, and I'm pleased to welcome you all here to tonight's Town Board meeting, August 23rd, 2017. The Town Board actually held a workshop on our 2018 budget this afternoon, starting at 4 o'clock through about 6 o'clock this evening. Those workshops are something we do every year as part of our budget development process. We believe that it is one of the most important, if not the most important thing that we do is how we spend your tax dollars. So we do it in an open way. Those of you that have been watching our recent meetings, we have completed our capital improvement plan for the next 3 years. Tonight and 2 weeks ago, we spent a couple of hours with our town department heads reviewing their budget requests, asking them questions, and that's always been a very valuable process. So that meeting started at 4, went through 6, and I now call this meeting of the town board to order. I do want to note that on the back table here in the room is a packet with tonight's agenda, as well as all of the supporting material for each of the items that is on the agenda. Now, if you're watching us at home or somewhere else, either on cable channel 12 or live streaming on YouTube, all of that same material is available for your viewing on the town website at townofbrighton.org. We encourage you to do that because we want you to participate in our meetings. This is open government. This is local government, the government that is closest to the people, and I think it's important and valuable that we do so in an open way. I'm going to start the meeting as we always do with a pledge to the flag. I'm going to ask Councilmember Chris Warner to lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Some housekeeping. In case you hear the town hall emergency alarm system, please everybody leave the room immediately. Please exit the room either through the door to my right, marked with the exit sign. If you go out that door, turn right, down the stairs, out the rear door to town hall, and away from the building. Or use either of the 2 double doors at the rear of this auditorium, go through the lobby, through the main front doors of town hall, down the stairs, and again, away from the building. We occasionally, if you're watching live tonight on Spectrum Cable, very rarely, but occasionally, there may be problems with the audio or the video broadcast. If you do experience difficulties viewing the live broadcast tonight, please contact Spectrum at 756-5000. That's 756-5000. I also just briefly, in light of recent events in Charlottesville and elsewhere, I do want to share a few thoughts. Brighton has long celebrated our diversity, and in many ways, we as a community have made clear that hate is not a Brighton value. I've made my own comments about Charlottesville on social media, on Facebook and on Twitter, and I encourage you to read my comments there. During the past year, we have seen the community of Brighton and Brighton residents respond to acts demonstrating hatred towards people of color and the Jewish community. And our response as a community has been that actions directing hatred at one member of our community are directed at each one of us. And that's true, as very true today as it has ever been. And so I want to encourage our residents to continue to champion the core Brighton value of diversity. Diversity makes us strong, and as town supervisor, I will continue to work to advance that core value in Brighton with our police department, which is committed to the philosophy of community policing, with our many fine educational institutions, particularly the Brighton Central School District, and with community groups like CURB, Community Uprooting Racism in Brighton, that provide a way for each resident to play their own part in continuing to make Brighton a diverse and a welcoming community for all. We're going to begin the meeting tonight, as we always do, with our open forum. Now, if you're here for one of the public hearings on the agenda, we have 3 tonight. Those public hearings relate to the proposed project at 1925 South Clinton Avenue, to an amendment to the University of Rochester's incentive zoning approval, or to the proposed community choice aggregation local law. If you're here to speak to any one of those 3, I would encourage you to wait until we call those public hearings. But the open forum is an opportunity for anyone, whether or not you live in the town of Brighton, and whether or not an item is on tonight's agenda, to address the town board about an issue or a question that is of importance to you. If you'd like to speak during the open forum, I'll just ask you to raise your hand. I'll recognize members of the audience that do raise their hand. I would ask that you come to the podium. If you would, please give your name and address when you do so. Please direct your comments to the board at all times and not to other members of the audience. As always, personnel matters are not matters that we can discuss in open forum, and I would ask that you not attempt to raise personnel issues during the open forum. Please be courteous, and please try to keep your comments as concise as possible. I would also note that if you have written comments, whether you're reading from them or to supplement your comments, and you'd like to include them in the record of tonight's meeting, you can do so. Simply hand them to the town clerk, and he'll see that they're incorporated in tonight's record. So with that, the open forum is now open. Is there anyone that would like to address the board in open forum? Judy.
Judy Schwartz, 179 Ashbourne Road. I have an unusual thing tonight. Last Friday, a neighbor of mine dropped off a pair of glasses that were found at the corner of Ashbourne and Branford Roads. I sent an email out to my neighborhood. I've heard from no one. I called the town hall today to see if they had a lost and found. She said, no, it's just for things around here. So I thought, well, maybe if I said it on TV tonight, somebody might be. I mean, they're a really nice pair of glasses, a prescription bifocal and so on. So somebody's really missing them. So if anybody knows of anyone, my number is 442-5111. I really hope we can find the owners. Thanks.
I do too. Thanks for sharing that, Judy.
Oh, boy.
Marge?
Good evening. I'm Marjorie Alamo, 90 Towpath Lane, town of Brighton. I wish we could have our address Brighton, New York, like Henrietta and all those places, but we don't. We're stuck with Rochester, 14618. I'll make it brief because I have company that came in from Florida unexpectedly, so I had to get back. You had said, Mr. Maley, that you were going to be doing some reconstruction maybe on the building for an air conditioner at one point, I think last year. I'm not sure. But if so, any construction on the building for anything? Maybe you could make room for a restroom for either or, okay? Just so that people that come to the meetings can use it in the need. The elderly people mostly do need the restroom and cannot quite make it downstairs, okay? So if you just keep that in mind, I appreciate that very much. Also, I've been asked to, I wish people would do this themselves. I've been asked to speak about a handicap ramp. You have 4 stairs coming up to the front of the building.
I'm sorry, about a what?
a handicap ramp.
Oh,
You know,
okay.
you have 4 stairs coming up, okay? And maybe one could just be leveled off a little bit and make it so that it can be a handicap accessible ramp. Oh, that's one of the, thank you. Okay. Every time it rains over the last 35 years that I've been in Brighton, my husband and I go out afterwards and we take our brooms, and I can't do it no more. I'm too old. I'm up there. My legs are not going to carry me out there anymore, nor my burning diabetic feet. To take a broom and sweep the, what do you call it, the sewer, the catch basin, whatever you want to call it. The water does pile up in certain areas, and it just collects mosquitoes. And we ourselves have called to have the mosquitoes treated for our lawn and around. It is bad. It gets bad. And if Chad or somebody could take care, just take a look at it, okay? And maybe they could just level it off a little bit so the water does run down into my driveway, which is the catch basin, which we keep open. So I just wanted to mention about that too, okay? Maybe Chad could drive by and take care of a look at that. So we don't have the mosquitoes. Okay. On the back side here. Oh, yes. Everybody, not everybody, a lot of people I run into in different places in the town have asked me to speak up and say something about this. And I really, really think it's very important. The town spent a lot of money for the most beautiful, beautiful sculpture we have in our town, and that is the eagle. And maybe you could redesign the front so that people going down the street can then see the eagle and enjoy it. Maybe have some solar lights around it, or a little parking, or maybe a picnic table or something. It's such a beautiful sculpture to be stuck way in the back with the money that everybody put out in the time. And the design is gorgeous and everything. And it just, I think the gardens are nice, but maybe we could find another place that would be more suitable for the gardens, and then take that space.
Not
and,
sure what the problem is,
I don't
because I
know
know the
either.
prior
It's not
speaker
me.
did, but if our folks downstairs
It
running the
just
TV,
hurts my ear because I
that
had
microphone at the
surgery
podium seems
in this
very,
bone.
very sensitive. I know no one's
Okay.
touching it.
But
so.
anyhow, you understand what I mean about that, do you not? Do you understand what I mean about that? Maybe
no,
move the gardens.
And I wanted to let you finish your comments, and then
Okay.
I was going
And
to
then
try to
maybe
address
we
each
could
of them.
plant some flowers or have solar lights and have it there. That's the town of Brighton, and they put that beautiful eagle up there. It should be there. It represents the veterans and all. And my daughter is still in the Navy, and it's 35 years, and her husband, and they have broken up quite a couple of groups of people that were going to let Niagara Falls loose on us. And it's a lot of stuff that, you know, my daughter, my son-in-law is into, and confidentially. But anyhow, then the last thing I'm going to go is the waste management. I see no reason why Towpath Lane cannot have the waste management refuge district, because there were 6 people that went to the town and had their signatures notarized. The Curtis.
There we go. Thank you.
Thank you. At the courtesy of Dan, I appreciate that. The people on our street work, and they don't, when they get out, the banks are closed, they can't get it notarized. They got kids, they got to get them to class or some school or some, violin class, or up to the town for the football or whatever. And it's not the thing on their mind right at the moment, but they want the waste management. Now, last meeting, I think you said Elmwood. Did you say Edgewood?
No, it's the Edgewood Refuse.
You said Edgewood
Yes, I
Refuge?
did.
Okay. 2 people went down Edgewood and counted over 100 houses in Edgewood. And you said 12 people were now listed into the program. Okay, that's 12 people against 100 houses, approximately, or maybe a little more, against 29 on towpath with 6. You break it down, I think we're entitled to have that, okay? The people on our street are senior citizens. They are handicapped. They can't get out. That's got to be taken into consideration. I wish you would all think about that. Someday you'll all be there and won't be able to do what we're doing now, okay? And sit at the board and do the things you do.
Marge, sorry if I could interrupt. As I've told you a couple of times on the phone, the Edgewood district just goes from Westfall to Monroe, so it's not all of Monroe or Edgewood Avenue. That's why such a small number takes place. And I
It doesn't go across
I
the
explained
railroad
this to you
tracks
on the
and
phone
on up.
last week.
And-
So
and-
the houses, the small number of signatures is because there's a very small number of houses, whereas the folks on towpath, there weren't just enough people didn't come in.
How
That's
many more
why.
people do you have
let-
to have?
Marge, I do want to address.
I want it stopped. Mr. Maley, the phone calls to me, I want it stopped. I don't want to be a neighborhood association anymore. Anybody out there would like to take it over, please do so. I have too many medical problems to handle all this, and I like to hear what you have to say.
Sure, and I'll answer each of those concerns. First, relating to the proposed work here at Town Hall and handicap access, I'll address those both. The work that's being proposed, and it's only a study at this point, would be a study of the HVAC system here at Town Hall. This is a 60-plus-year-old building. Heating and air conditioning systems have changed a lot over the years, become more efficient. We are going to consider a study to try to improve that. So we're not going to be making physical plant changes to the building at this time. I do understand your concern about restroom facilities. There is the only public restroom in this part of Town Hall is on the ground floor below us here.
I know.
And that is where the handicap access to the building is. There is an existing access to the building. It is in the rear. And that, of course, is where the handicap accessible parking spaces are. Putting in a handicap access in the front would involve more than flattening the existing
Cost-wise.
stairway. There's, angles that have to, you have to have it can't be too steep. There are, the ADA has some pretty significant. Would it be helpful, do you want to sit? Maybe someone can get you a chair there.
Oh, it's very hard to sit with a new hip and new kneecap. Kind of,
You want to sit, or are you done speaking?
you got a pillow.
So in any event, but I understand the concern both with handicap access. There is a handicap entrance and an elevator downstairs, and that is where the bathrooms are. It would be very nice to have another bathroom facility up here, but right now we don't have any plans to make major changes to the physical plant. The Veterans Memorial, I'm glad you feel as strongly about it as I do, because it is a beautiful, striking memorial, and I think my colleague Jim Vogel and so many members of the community who really were the leaders behind getting this great memorial to veterans of all eras that have a connection to Brighton. Its location is where it is after some study at the time. It was not, I've seen, for example, there's an eagle that I don't think looks nearly as nice as Mary Taylor's eagle on our Veterans Memorial along the throughway. But this memorial was intended to be a more contemplative and away from the street. So there is landscaping there. I know Jim continues to work on making sure we make that Veterans Memorial as attractive as it can be, because we do. We hold events there on Memorial Day and Veterans Day every year, and we invite the community to join us for those. And we do want to make sure that our veterans families, and the many people who are friends of veterans and want to thank people, have access to the memorial. So, in any event, it is a fine sculpture, and I'm glad you share that feeling about it. I know you have spoken with the town clerk and with my assistant several times about the waste management in the Towpath Lane Refuse District. And I believe yourself and 6 other of the 29 homes on Towpath Lane did sign a petition asking that a refuse district be formed. State law establishes how a refuse district or any other special improvement district can be formed by petition. And it requires more than half of the assessed valuation of the area set forth in the petition. Your petition did describe an area that included Towpath Lane and Towpath Court. And at this point, those petitions do not constitute the requisite 50% in that area. The petition for the Edgewood Avenue district, as Dan mentioned, only included homes between Westfall and Monroe, and they did have more than 50% of the assessed value in that area, so they were eligible to form a district. We will continue to keep your petitions on file. I know Dan's office actually acted as notary for some, if not all, of the people who came in, and will continue to make our services available as a notary. But the law is very clear. We cannot put taxes on a tax bill. We cannot charge district charges unless a district is properly formed. The town board is required to make findings. The assessor is required to
When's the next time
make
that they
certification.
would have to Excuse me, but, I mean, if I was
Can you
to
speak in-
beg people, how many, do I have to, like, January of this next year?
At this point, it was June of 2018 for a January 1 of 19 starting date.
Okay.
So we will keep these, and we always encourage our neighborhood residents to become a part of a refuse district. They have been a way to save costs on refuse cleanup, but they also limit the number of times a garbage truck goes down your street, the number of days that containers are out in front of your house. So there are a number of attributes. Yes, Marge?
Excuse me, must leave.
No problem.
I really would like you to take, of all the things before I die, would you please move the gardens out so you can see the eagle?
Thank you, Marge.
Excuse me, Marge.
And the one thing I did want to say is our comprehensive plan committee has reviewed the Buckland Park and future plans for that area. And as I have said previously, we will look at their recommendations and take those into account before considering any changes to the community garden, the Veterans Memorial, or otherwise. And thank you for coming in tonight. Louise, did you want to say something before Marge left?
Too late.
Marge, I think Louise wanted to, if you're able to, Louise?
Marge, can you hear me? Yes. Jim Vogel, who was responsible for the memorial, has been advocating to move the gardens as well. And if they are moved, it won't be before the winter market is built. Right, because it would be moved over to that area if it's moved. So it is being considered, and it is being talked about here. Okay.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to address the town board during our open forum period? I thought there was one other hand earlier. Yeah, come on up. Couldn't remember who.
My first time in a
Welcome.
Thank you very much. This is about one of your proposed items, so I don't know if I should say it now or while you're speaking. It's about the community choice aggregation.
That actually we will be, is one of the public hearing items, so I would, if you want your comments to be part of the record, and I hope you will, if you can wait until that public hearing is called, and they will become part of the record.
Gladly.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to address the board during our open forum? Hearing none, we will continue with our agenda this evening, and can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Bill, I believe it would be with the amendment that we would include a communication from Fisher Associates that Mary Ann forwarded to us.
Is that relating to
The first public
the
hearing.
first item? I do see a reference to,
There should be the
Sure.
updated,
It does
the
say
updated
no.
agenda was sent out.
Yeah,
yeah,
Very good, Dave.
thanks.
yeah.
I withdraw that. I do move that we approve the agenda as lays before me here.
And we have Jim's second. Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DePonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Maley?
Aye. Can I have a motion to approve and file the town board meeting minutes for the August 9th town board meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DePonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Maley?
Aye. We'll now begin public hearings. We do have 3 public hearings tonight. As I mentioned earlier, the public hearing for proposal and incentive zoning proposal for property located at 1925 South Clinton Avenue. A public hearing concerning a proposed amendment to the incentive zoning approval for the U of R South Campus institutional plan development, and finally for the proposed community choice aggregation local law. The 1925 South Clinton Avenue public hearing is first. That is a matter that I have recused myself on, so I will again turn the chair over to Jim Vogel, and I will leave the room and ask that one of you come and get me. I'll be in my office once the public hearing is over.
Will do. And the matter before us here is a public hearing regarding incentive zoning proposal for the property located at 1925 South Clinton Avenue. And in this case, Ken, just want to make sure this is just a continuation of the hearing that we had.
Correct. We did open the incentive zoning hearing, but I do believe that we published notice of this hearing as well.
Yes.
Mr. Amon, could you confirm that?
One moment, I changed screens. It was in the August 17th edition of the Brighton Pittsburgh Post.
Good. All right. And before we open the public hearing again, I'm going to ask Ramsey Boehner, our senior town planner, regarding the communication you received from Tim Faulkner, the transportation manager from Fisher Associates.
If I could, Councilman Vogel.
Yes.
I think the public hearing record is open and we're just continuing it, so
Yeah.
Mr. Boehner's comments and that letter, I think, would be part of the public hearing record, which is fine.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, Councilman, I'm not
We were
sure
just
what
saying-
you were asking.
Basically, the gist of the communications you received from Tim Faulkner.
There are comments on the traffic study that was prepared by the applicant on the project. There are comments after reviewing the traffic study that need to be addressed before a determination of significance could be made pursuant to seeker.
Okay, all right. And a traffic impact study can be a normal part of any public hearing or review of this matter, if in fact there is a traffic question, if that is in fact the case, and that's what we had before. So with that, we'll open up the public hearing, and is there anyone here who wishes to speak on behalf?
Hi, good evening. Ashley Champion with Nixon Peabody and Bill Dirtle from DeMarco Group. Just a brief update that Council's correct. This is a continuation of the existing public hearing. We were here several meetings prior, introducing the project and the chain of events which have led us to the current incentive and amenity offerings. Since the last appearance before this board, or since the last public hearing opportunity, there was a submission of an updated application supplement on August 3rd. Hopefully you all have that. That describes and includes the applicant's best offer on the sidewalk amenity. We had, if you recall, gone back and forth a little bit on whether it was more desirable from the town's perspective to have the initially offered trail amenity with some sidewalks or more sidewalks in lieu of the trail amenity. It was our understanding, based on the feedback from the board, Public Works, and town staff, that sidewalks were really the more important focus for the town. So we have officially updated our application to include a description of the updated sidewalk amenity and also some nice renderings so you can see exactly where the proposed sidewalks would be located. They are on portions in addition to the project frontage of South Clinton Avenue, Rudeville Boulevard, Lockdeville Boulevard, and Elmwood Avenue, totaling approximately 2,200 feet of sidewalk improvements in addition to the 835 feet of sidewalk improvements that will be located at the project frontage. The additional amenity that is being offered, as you're all familiar, is the cash amenity, which would be paid in lieu of what the town portion of the tax payment would be during the pilot period. So that is the current, based on this August 3rd supplement that you should all have, offering of the incentives and amenities. We did receive, Ramsey forwarded it over when he received it this afternoon, the traffic comments from the town's consultant. It's our understanding, based on these comments, that they do not rise to the level or type that would impact a determination of significance. We think they can all adequately be addressed during the site plan phase of this project. It's our hope that the board would be able to move forward with a negative declaration and an approval of the incentive zoning application tonight. That's our hope, and we can address the traffic details, which is typical during the site plan approval phase of the project. Bill, I don't know if you have anything to add on that.
Just to Bill Dirtle, the DeMarco Group, just to implore the board, if at all possible, to vote on the incentive application this evening, and as a condition of that, hopefully of that approval, the traffic study can be part of the site plan review process, as Ashley said. The reason that I am making this statement is that the project has two significant anchor tenants at this point that are beginning to lose their patience with us collectively. So I'm hopeful that that doesn't rise to the level of losing those businesses. And with that in mind, we would like to move forward as soon as possible with the incentive zoning approval. So thank you.
Is there anyone in the public here that wishes to make a comment, question?
Councilman Vogel, I just have a quick question. You mentioned site plan review. My understanding is that your client delivered to the town an application for site plan approval. Is that the same project layout and design as we have before the town board today, or are there changes that this town board should know about before they're asked to go ahead with incentive zoning?
They are the same. They are the same.
The identical layout. If I looked at the site plan that you submitted earlier this week, it would be the same as the site plan that was submitted to this town board. Because I haven't seen it. I just don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's our understanding. That application, I believe, came through Costage's office.
I would say the site plans are different,
Okay.
considerably different, actually.
Considerably.
I did look at them a few minutes before this meeting. I'm not going to go through it. That's up to you guys to go
In
through the
what-
changes in the site plan. I also believe that they're proposing a 3-lot subdivision as part of that application.
And that was
Understanding.
part of the initial application, did say that the lot was going to be divided into several separate lots. That was definitely something that was discussed and is part of the incentive zoning. It's not part of the incentive zoning request because it's ancillary to the incentive zoning application, but that's something that has always been contemplated with the project. Doodlebugs is requiring a separate tax parcel for their portion of the development, and other portions of the site will require the same. That doesn't, change the thresholds or any other issues with the site development. You wouldn't know, other than on the tax map, that they're going to be divided into separate parcels. Ramsey, I'm sorry, I don't have the benefit of that form that you're talking about, so would you just give us the highlights of the ways that you think?
I spent literally 5 minutes just comparing it, just to see, because it is a different plan. That's your plan. I would think you would know the differences between them. I know, at least in the back, there are 2 buildings where you proposed 1. That's one difference from what is at least submitted with this.
Well,
And the only other thing is, I'm not going to here to make your presentation for you on those differences, but what I would say is that I guess I'm going to ask you a question. And
Okay.
that question is, have you verified that what you're proposing in that site plan is in compliance with what you're proposing for the zoning for the property?
I would say that personally, neither of us have, but yes, I am sure that the applicant and the engineer made sure that any thresholds or other issues that are outlined in any of the application materials that we've submitted with this incentive zoning request are accurately reflected in the site plan.
So
And so when
no
you-
other incentives will be needed by this project as a result of that site plan submittal?
We're not requesting any additional incentives than what we have requested. And so you just referenced that it's a single building, and I don't know if you recall this, but initially the project did have 2 separate buildings. That changed actually at the planning board recommendation phase. They said that they preferred the look of the 1 building, so that was changed many iterations ago of the draft development plan.
Yeah, no,
And-
all we were asking was just so the town board can understand
Yeah.
the differences between the 2 plans.
Yes,
That's
and-
all that's being asked of you.
7,000 square feet is not, is the aggregate total square footage.
And I think if you recall, in the way that the application was drafted and the way that these applications work, is the plan that's attached as part of the site, or as part of the incentive zoning application, is a conceptual plan. There are thresholds that are developed with that plan, including density and overall square footage and green space and parking requirements and some other particulars like setbacks. And we're not going to be able to change or exceed any of those thresholds or requirements. There will be some changes once the vanilla box is changed to an actual tenant. Obviously, there are some tweaks, and that's why there's a site plan. That's why there's a site plan phase of any incentive zoning development. So you don't develop the plan fully and engineer it and have all of the details of every portion of the footprint developed in the incentive zoning phase. Of course, the site plan has to be in compliance with and not exceeding any of the thresholds developed during the incentive zoning phase, and we're confident that that's the case here. But for example,
Okay.
the 2 buildings being merged into 1, that was actually specifically contemplated.
So you're saying that the submittal to the planning board either meets the existing zoning regulations or will meet your proposed incentive zoning regulations?
Yes, it
is
will
that
be,
right?
it will be in compliance with the existing incentive, with the requested incentive zoning.
Or the existing zoning?
regulations. Yes.
And the engineer has verified that, do you know?
Yes, that's how they got to the plan. They used the draft regulations and the requirements, and they understand, what the thresholds are that they need to be within. And they also were the ones who worked on the draft conceptual plans, so those would have started as their base point. Are there any other questions about that or the process, or where we are in the process and what we are seeking tonight?
Well, comments that I've made in the past relate more to a social issue that deals with the primary tenant, Doodlebugs, which seems to run a very good operation based on my visit out in Henrietta. My concern there is that the Doodlebugs does not accept applicants that are subsidized by the state through the county-administered state program. I seem to be alone in that concern, and I've not heard much raised as objection from the community. I'm willing to take that under advisement, but I wanted to again raise that issue. It would be my hope that in cooperation with the landlord developer, that they might be able to compromise that policy, which I think neglects an opportunity to address a real important social issue, which is that children of all different economic groups should have access to the same quality level of care that Doodlebugs provides in this instance. But so I've raised that issue previously. Another issue is, of course, the incentives, and that's what we're here for, is on the incentive zoning aspect itself. And I appreciate the developer, Mr. DeMarco, was here as well, concerned about the cost of the incentives. The sidewalks have been the focus, and yes, I've agreed that the trail that was anticipated initially and originally kind of brainstormed would be a great amenity, but I think more importantly, I'd like to see the development of the sidewalks around the site. The Rue de Ville, Lac de Ville sidewalk segments are one of them. I've seen the analysis both by Mike Guyan's office and the developer in terms of relative cost. But my focus is I want to see the Elmwood Avenue blanks filled in. We've got two sections, one between Eastland and Westland, and help me, Jim, on the location of the other.
Westland west to Fairfield or Topaz?
To Topaz. There are
Topaz.
two stretches along there that would service the site. I think we'll take into account what additional traffic may be generated out on Elmwood Avenue. Elmwood Avenue is very difficult for pedestrians and bicyclists. And this project, I think, is a good one, an important one, to develop this undeveloped land, but it's going to add to that load. And to connect those sections through there, I think, would be an important amenity and not untypical of the incentives that have been provided by similar developments further downstream, down Elmwood there, with the drugstore. And I know the developer, it's quite reasonable to look at the cost. That's very important. But I just think that's an appropriate amenity that we connect that full Elmwood stretch as well as down to, I believe it's Duffield on the other side from the site, further down Clinton. Personally, I'd love to see the Rue de Ville, Lac de Ville sections as well, but I think those are less heavily traveled, and my primary focus is the Elmwood stretches. Bill, do you want to?
Of which nearly 800 feet between Westland Drive and Eastland Drive is a part of our sidewalk amenity.
Yes, and I appreciate that. Can we have the second section? That's the additional one, which will take us all the way down there, connecting where the state is developing, unless I'm misreading the application.
No, you're not. Our application and the amenities that we have delineated here are that's what we're offering.
Correct.
Including, you mentioned the Duffield, it would be nice to have it on South Clinton Avenue. We are running that all the way
Yeah,
down.
well, that's kind of, I'm expecting that. I want to see that continue because that's a lot of traffic along
Sure.
Clinton. But the second segment of the Elmwood sidewalks, I believe, are lacking from what you're proposing. Am I right, Bill?
Yes.
Right.
That's correct. That's where we've, that's where
We're that far apart.
our differences, yes.
Yes.
Right, we had to stop somewhere. So from our
It'd be
perspective,
such a shame to have, is it what, about 300 feet?
Yes.
That last stretch to tie, and it's a shame not to be able to have that whole stretch completed. And I know, based upon what people have said relating to other projects, they say, well, why don't we have them do the Elmwood section? It wasn't your project they were talking about. But your project does relate to that neighborhood.
and I'm not sure that 300 feet is,
There's two sections,
Accurate number
actually.
of
Their
what we're-
I wish I
proposal,
had that in front of me.
their proposal goes from Eastland to Westland and stops at Westland.
Right.
Then there's going to be a gap from Westland to Fairfield Drive. That's not going to have sidewalk. And then from Faith Temple to Clinton Avenue is another section that would not have sidewalks.
Now, which of these, are any of these being addressed by the state in the signal project they're putting up?
There is some sidewalks along Elmwood Avenue that will be, but what I'm referring to will not be addressed by the county in their signalization improvement project along
So that'd
Elmwood
be
Avenue.
from the signal at Lockdeville west to Clinton.
Yeah.
It's not included in the county.
Yeah, a
plan.
little further west, but yeah,
So
exactly.
their plan goes from Lockdeville at the signal, the new signal,
Just west of that.
east to what, Topaz or whatever it is?
I would have to look, I think it's to,
Yes, it was, our understanding that it was approximately 1,200 feet.
right, that the town was seeking in
Our
additional
differences were
sidewalks.
About an additional 1,200 feet.
I would say, I agree, yeah, I
That's
would
what
say
was
it's
provided
1,200
to
feet.
us. So it's quite a
1,200
bit.
feet
1,200
from Faith Temple to South Clinton. And I don't know the difference between Westland and Fairfield Drive. I don't have that measurement, I'm sorry.
That, I think, is about 300 feet.
Oh, so the Westland to Eastland is the
Westland
300
to, no,
feet.
Westland to Fairfield.
Which we're
is
gonna do.
approximately 100 yards or 300 feet. That's what you were asking.
Your proposal has Westland to Eastland.
Yes.
And then it's,
So you're saying Fairfield's an additional 300 feet beyond Eastland,
I don't know,
approximately?
I don't know the actual distance
Westland
myself.
to Fairfield Signal to connect with the existing sidewalk west of that is about 300 feet. That would connect all of that, all the way from Town Hall down to Lac de Ville.
Chris, just to be clear, was your point that that 300 feet was more important and it would, in your opinion, be acceptable to this board in lieu of the Rue de Ville and Lac de Ville portions?
I'm not sure about the 300 feet on Elmwood. I got to defer to the map, which I didn't bring with me, unfortunately. I left it on my desk at the office. I'm interested in connecting the sidewalks all the way from Westland or Eastland all the way through to Clinton Avenue. I believe the state is doing part of it. You have proposed to do a portion of that,
The county, not the state.
or excuse me, the county with the traffic signal,
Right.
the improvements that they're working on right now.
If our differences this evening were defined as 300 feet, I'm not going to let that.
Yeah, I have a feeling I'm
Wait.
wrong in terms of the distance, and that's the problem. So I don't want to be
felt
held to that.
it was more like, 1,200.
It's based upon a discussion I had with
You're
Councilman
both
Vogel
talking, we have a recorder. Please, let's say it again, Bill,
earlier. Well, I
and
think.
then you can ask.
I think that our Bill's point is, if we're talking about 300-ish additional feet on Elmwood in lieu of the, it's about 260 feet we're giving on Rue de Ville and Lac de Ville, would be close enough that we could make that work, likely. But if it's really the 1,200 or so feet that we've been hearing is what the town's looking for additionally on Elmwood, we continue to have a different point of view as to whether or not that's appropriate.
Go ahead.
If I may, I believe I'm mistaken based upon a discussion I had with Councilman Vogel early in the day where he referred to 300 feet, and I misunderstood which 300 feet we were
Yeah,
talking
it's
about.
Westland to the signal at Fairfield, and right beyond that, there is an existing sidewalk. So that 300 feet, plus or minus 10 or 20 feet, would connect everything from Eastland all the way to the light at Fairfield.
And I'm interested in continuing that all the way down the link up with what the county's going to do. That will take us, I believe, all the way to Clinton.
That already exists. There's a sidewalk that already exists. When the county finishes their piece from Lac de Ville eastbound, they will bring that up to an pre-existing sidewalk east of Lac de Ville on the north side, and will go all the way to the unpaved portion that is really right at Fairfield Signal and Fairfield Road. Okay? And what we're talking about is, in addition to the 870-some feet, Eastland to Westland, we're talking about going from Westland to Fairfield traffic signal, which would then connect with the pre-existing sidewalk on the north side. The only piece, when the county is done, would be from Lac de Ville west to Clinton. And that has
Councilman
not been
Vogel,
part of the
you-
discussion.
You
What?
agree that that's an additional 300 feet?
The
Give or
additional,
take.
I'm confused.
Yeah.
Is this Mike's, may I?
what you were saying, what he was asking, we would have an existing sidewalk, eventually with the county's portion of their new sidewalk on the north side of Elmwood Avenue, that would start at the new signal at Lac de Ville, go all the way eastbound, and if you do the additional 300 and some feet, plus the 800 and some 70 feet, from Eastland to Westland, that would make an existing sidewalk all the way from Lac de Ville, all the way to Town Hall. Yeah.
Okay.
So I think that might be this
This is what we're
portion
talking
here.
about here.
Ken, do you know if it's from this packet that the town engineer provided,
Yes,
the
this
first
it is.
page, the 344 feet? Okay, that's
I
just
believe the
this.
section I'm referring to, Bill, you're quite correct, I think that it's about 1,200 feet. As described in Mike Guyon's memo, is approximately 1,180 feet in length. And in his summary, he refers to it, I believe, as the north side of Elmwood from the western entrance of Faith Tabernacle Church westward to the existing sidewalk. Is that correct, Ken?
Set forth in paragraph 1B of Mr. Guyon's memorandum, and it refers to it as 1,180 linear feet.
Right. Sorry, again, I confused myself by speaking with Mr. Vogel earlier, and he was identifying, it's not his fault, it's my fault. He was describing a different 300 square feet, or linear feet than I had,
Then you were thinking about
than
it.
I was thinking about.
So you were referencing this 1180, the
Apparently, it's
about
the
1,200.
1180 in distance. It's the second large segment along Elmwood Avenue. And as I say, I consider that more heavily traveled and therefore more important to me, or to the community in general, than perhaps those additional segments along Rue de Ville and Lac de Ville, which there's a significant difference I appreciate in the distance. If it's 260 feet on the Lac de Ville, Rue de Ville, this one is 1,000 feet more than that.
Yes,
344 is
it's
between what and
a
what?
separate section between this, that's what Mr. Vogel was speaking of, the Eastland Ave westward to the existing sidewalk that's
The
already there.
1B section
Yes,
that Mr. Guyan was referring to. You, I believe, had
It's the
proposed to
additional.
do the 1A section.
okay. So from our perspective, and I know that we have discussed this, so this August 3rd supplement that we submitted outlining the proposed sidewalk amenity is what the applicant is willing to give here for this application. We think it's fair, we think it's reasonable, we think it's justified and sensible based on the incentives that we are requesting. Keeping in mind the context, the property that we're looking to develop is directly across the street from an existing retail plaza in close proximity to existing office uses. We are looking for a mixed-use, right-sized development of retail and office, with our anchor tenant being a daycare, which is right now a conditionally permitted use at the property. That's not something we would even need to come to this board for as far as the use. So the uses that we are requesting are completely consistent with the neighborhood. No one would drive by this plaza and say, you know, what did those guys have to give in order to get that over there? It's going to look completely appropriate, and it will completely blend with the area and the neighborhood. That being said, this town does have incentive zoning regulations, and we would not be able to pursue our use request via a rezoning or a use variance without coming through the incentive zoning process. We understand that. However, we think that the amenities that the town would require, keeping in mind, again, the context of the incentives that we are requesting, should be fair and reasonable and balanced to, and what the test is, you know, potential impacts from those incentives, which we think are non-existent, given the nature of the corridor and the town's desire to make that a business and commercial corridor, and that this property would be helping further that goal of the town. Mr. DeMarco has agreed to construct, aside from the 835 feet of project frontage, about $170,000 worth of sidewalks throughout the town of Brighton that are not connected or related to this site, including portions of sidewalks on Elmwood Avenue. It's about 2,200 lineal feet of sidewalks that he has offered to construct. In addition to that, even though we are entitled, based on the type of development that we are pursuing, to seek financial assistance under the form of a pilot agreement, we understand that the town is rightly looking forward to receiving some tax dollars and some beneficial use in a monetary form from that property. So although we are entering into a pilot agreement, we will be making the town whole during that term of the pilot agreement for any tax dollars that it would otherwise be receiving from the project, which are very significant in the tens of thousands of dollars that this town can use to put sidewalks up and down Elmwood Avenue or wherever else in the town that you would like, money that would not otherwise be available but for this development if you were to continue the property at its currently assessed value, which is, I think, around $200,000, right, the land, or if it were to be made for another use that was not subject to taxation, both of which are real possibilities if this development cannot or does not work. So that cash amenity payment, which once the pilot burns off will just turn into regular and true tax dollars, is also a real benefit for the town. And again, the town can use that additional money towards sidewalks or whatever else the town desires, in addition to the $170,000 worth of sidewalks that the DeMarco Group will be constructing here at the project. So from our perspective, the applicant's to the point where we feel as though the amenities that we're offering, although it may not hit every point on the town's wish list, and I don't know that any project ever could or would, there are always going to be more things that the town would like, and that would be nice if the town could have. Although we may not, again, be hitting every one of those wish list items, we think that what we're offering is more than fair to justify the incentive zoning request that we have submitted. So at this point, the amenities are as stated in this August 3rd application supplement, and it's our hope, as we said, that the board would move forward to adopt a seeker negative declaration and improve our incentive zoning request.
I have a few questions about
Yes.
that. Now, I understand that you feel that it's a fair amenity package that's being offered in light of the incentives that are being sought, and as the board, it's our obligation to vote whether you're correct or whether we disagree. And my questions pertain to the value of the amenities being proposed. Now, I see that it's based on, I have your cost estimate that's included in your August 3rd correspondence, and you're coming up with construction costs of $13.50 per square foot. Where did that number come from?
Our engineers.
Comes from the engineers and the estimating department at DeMarco Constructors.
Okay.
It is an all-in design build cost. I think there was a discrepancy between what the town was looking at in terms of their per square foot costs. And at one of our last meetings, we were able to explain the differences in that to replace an existing sidewalk, maybe $7.50 a square foot, but to create a new sidewalk with the design and the forming and the site work that is needed, it costs the
Now, with the
$13.50.
design.
And I think, I was just going to say, following up on that, because I think that that's a fair question, because there was a little bit of discrepancy as to, the town's perspective as to how much a sidewalk costs versus our perspective as to how much a sidewalk costs. And one thing that I hadn't considered until I went back and asked that same thing, and Mr. Colucci explained it to me, is that their numbers, that our numbers also take into account actual site-related issues. So not all of the sidewalks that are proposed are in areas that are perfectly flat at a nice grade where they're just pouring pavement over grass, where you can just sort of pick out, pluck the typical cost number and what it should cost. There are culverts and extra supports and other materials and methods that would need to be used in order to put the sidewalks everywhere that are contemplated. So that was something else that they had baked into their numbers that I hadn't fully understood.
Now, as far as the design process, then the amenity package that's being proposed contemplates that the DeMarco Group will undertake all of the design and the permitting. Now, will the town have the opportunity to sign off or approve the design and make sure that our building department, our engineering department is okay with that design that's
Of course,
that's
yep,
proposed?
absolutely.
Okay, and this isn't including any acquisition costs for easements. So basically, it's on the town to get the easements, and then you'll construct the sidewalks as is being proposed.
It does include the easement mapping, though. So once the town has obtained the legal rights, we would take care of the step where we are putting together the exhibits and the design that they could then, easily attach to the documents to formalize the agreement. But yes, the town would have to approach the owners, and it would be a town sidewalk, so they would have to be the grantee of the easement right.
But the issue is if we can't get the easements on certain properties, then it's almost as though the amenity is contingent on something that we may not be able to obtain. Now, I know that under the incentive zoning, under our code, that the town can accept a cash payment in order to fund a construction project such as sidewalks. So, and I mean, it seems to me that a cash payment would be cleaner. It's just, okay, this is how much these sidewalks are going to cost, all in easements, permitting, design, and then the actual construction. Here's your check. Town, you go and you fund a project and then go and build the sidewalks. We don't, leave us out of it.
Sure.
That to me seems like it's cleaner. Why is that not being proposed as part of the amenities package, the amenity package?
Well, I don't know if you want to jump in.
I think we've had that debate maybe at the last meeting in terms of what the
Mr.
value-
Dirtle, just make sure you speak into the mic so you can be heard. Thank you.
Excuse me. Sure. We had that discussion, I think, that at the last meeting in terms of the value of the work, and we justified what we thought our cost basis was. I understand your point in terms of maybe just a cash amenity, but possibly if there are some stretches where the easements are not possible, we would be amenable to building a sidewalk somewhere else, maybe further Chris's objectives in another area of the town where easements could be obtained.
I think to follow up on that, it's the applicant would prefer to control the process for the actual construction. It's his day job, so that's what he wants and thinks is most appropriate. But to Bill's point, he fully intends on building this amount of sidewalks. So if there was an issue, we could definitely draft the approval and the relevant governing documents that it will be this amount of lineal footage of sidewalk, and this is where the town wants it. But if the town changes, cannot get easements in those areas and changes course and would prefer to have them somewhere else in the reasonably close vicinity, I can see that we would be open to that as well.
And then you hit an interesting point with control, because I mean, from my perspective, sitting on the town board, is that I'd rather see the town have control over that, because once the sidewalks are in, and that's the problem, it's our contractor, we can pursue our remedies between our contract with the contractor. Whereas if it's the developer that's handling that, I see that issues could arise in the future. Hopefully they wouldn't. But I think it would just be cleaner if we were to have a cash payment in lieu of having I mean, that's just my thought. I can probably get past it,
And
but.
If I could, Mr. DePonzio, just for the public hearing record, I think what you're referring to is Town Code Section 2096. And what that code section actually says is that if the amenity is not immediately feasible, then the town can require a cash payment to be paid into a trust fund set aside to provide those amenities when they do become feasible. And so, yeah, it would seem to apply to this situation. And of course, if that was what the town board wished to do, that is approve the project subject to that condition, that is certainly something that the town board could use under its incentive zoning provisions.
And we would understand that, and you could have the option to either transfer that lineal footage to another area of the town, or we could isolate the cost of that section that is, for one reason or another, unattainable at the time.
I don't understand why,
Deposit that amount.
pardon?
And deposit, so if there was a portion that we couldn't construct, we could put up the cash for that.
No, my question is, if you're willing to I forgot the number of square feet, but if you're going to put like 800 square feet in the Rue de Ville and that area, but we would prefer to have sidewalks on Elmwood Avenue, what's the difference if you do it here than if you do it there?
There'd be no difference at all, and we'd be happy to accommodate the town if you just direct us where you want the sidewalks.
And yes, I think the issue right now, the Rue de Ville, Lac de Ville is only about 260 feet. So the additional 1,200 square feet or lineal feet on Elmwood is much more than that. But if you don't like where we're putting these ones and would prefer to put them somewhere else within a reasonable area, as Bill said, we're open to that.
Another question, just going back, I mean, another concern, getting back to the cash payment and how do we get the funding for the easements, is that we just went through two days of budget workshops. We did our capital improvement plan back in July. October, we're going to be doing our budget hearings. It's a difficult process, and finding the money is difficult to fund all of the services that we want to provide that our residents expect. So if we're saddled with having to go out and fund these easements in order to receive an amenity, that's just a concern of mine. One other point that I just wanted to ask, and it was just more of a statement than a question. But one other question that I had was regarding the seeker. Now, I know that we just got the correspondence from our traffic consultant, and that there are some issues that I believe staff feels that need to be addressed before we can make a determination of significance under seeker. And I mean, a concern that I would have is that if we said, well, we can handle it at site plan, and then all of a sudden it goes to our planning board, and the planning board says, well, why didn't we do an environmental impact statement on these traffic issues? I fear that if we've made the determination of significance not to require an environmental impact statement, that then the door is shut. That then once it goes to site plan, I don't think the planning board could then request one if the impact were such that one would be necessary. So I think I'd rather see, and I mean, I defer to staff to guide me and counsel, but if in fact those issues could be addressed, and if your traffic engineer then basically discusses how our traffic consultant's concerns can be addressed, then fine, then perhaps we can move forward. But I think we need to get more information on that.
Councilman, the door that I'm concerned about shutting is that of the end users that make this project feasible. And it's, I'm not exaggerating or trying to make a point here that we are in a very delicate position with our end users, given the time frame that this has taken. And with that in mind, that's why we're hopeful that the seeker process can be, and I'm not sure the legalities of the staff position, how that can be accommodated in terms of a condition, but we have to really show evidence of progress here to keep these businesses alive in terms of their interest on that site.
Absolutely, but I think these are issues that can be worked through in a pretty expeditious fashion. I think perhaps if we got some kind of response to our correspondence from Fisher Associates, they shouldn't take all that long. And I understand that you're under the gun, you're dealing with tenants, but if it's a good project, it's on you. If it's a bad project, it's on us. So I just want to make sure that we've dotted all of our i's and crossed our t's.
To put a finer point on that, Mr. DePonzio, and Mr. Boehner and I did just have a very brief consult, really just confirming what I think we both know is, under seeker, you cannot make a decision on incentive zoning without first making a determination of significance under seeker. So you would have to make, if you had the mind to try to approve incentive zoning this evening, which I will say I have not prepared a resolution for, you would first need to make a determination of significance under seeker. And I will also say that staff is not in a position to make a recommendation based in part on the traffic engineer's report that we just received today. So it's not to be insensitive to the end user, but we have to make sure that we not only don't approve a bad project, but that we do it lawfully if we approve the project, that it's done through the proper channels so that the whole thing doesn't fall apart later on. So that seeker determination must come first before your incentive zoning determination can happen.
And we completely understand and agree with that, and I think Councilman DePonzio, you do as well, knowing that we're looking for the negative declaration, but then what if the planning board says, why did you say traffic was okay in your negative declaration? So we understand the incentive zoning approval cannot be received before the seeker negative declaration. Our hope is that the view of these traffic comments would be that they do not rise to the level that they would, regardless of our answers to them on some of the small percentage differences or some of the other methodology type comments, even when addressed, could not rise to the level that we have a potentially significant adverse environmental issue related to traffic. That would have to be this board's finding in order to move forward with the negative declaration. It sounds like staff may need more time before they are comfortable advising you in that regard. So we understand that that's your prerogative. Our hope again is to be able to move forward, but of course we want to make sure that everything is done in a legally and procedurally appropriate manner. And our hope is at least to get a sense from this board that you are comfortable with where we're going on the substance of the application, because the hope is that, if it is required before moving forward on the negative declaration, that we answer these traffic-related comments, that once we do that, we would be able to move forward and show some momentum to our tenants and move forward with some relatively quick progress from this point, because it has been a couple of years now.
Can I ask you who the second tenant is?
I'm hearing this right now, too, for the first time. I'm excited.
Trillium Health.
Okay.
Trillium Health.
Oh, okay.
So that would be in the back, then, medical office building, Bill?
Yes.
Yes.
Medical
Would
use.
they take the whole building?
Well, that's part of our negotiations now in terms of what their square footage requirements are, but they are acquiring some additional through acquisitions, and they need more space. And
Ms. Champion,
Yes.
I would echo what Councilman DePonzio has already said, that I'm not comfortable with a negative declaration, having read the Fisher report just before coming over, because we just received it late in the day. I was hopeful that we could make a negative declaration on it, but the significance of these differences in this analysis could be significant from my perhaps layman's approach to this traffic study. I really have to see that to be able to get past the seeker threshold.
Sure.
And then move on to the incentive zoning aspect. Again, and to try to clarify my very confused, obvious math on sidewalks, it appears to be what I'm asking for is an additional 1,480 feet of sidewalks. It is the 300-foot stretch, which is Westland to Fairfield, and 1,180 feet from Faith Temple to wherever the sidewalk would end there near South Clinton. I wasn't aware that Westfield of Fairfield was not included in your proposal. In reviewing your proposal and Mr. Guyan's maps and so forth, what's missing to my eye is that 300 plus 1180. So it is a significant request. I appreciate that. I don't do it lightly. But it's based upon what I understand is comparable to what's been given for similar incentive zoning applications by other developers along this same stretch.
We understand that. We have heard the question and the request, and I would say it's been asked and it's been answered.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I understand your perspective on seeker, and again, it's the board's prerogative, and we want to make sure that everything's wrapped up. I am happy that we did receive those comments, so that's good that we have something to work off of as far as traffic, and hopefully that will be the last open issue from a seeker perspective, that once we can address those comments, that there will not be any lingering aspect of that portion of your review. Is there anything else that?
There were some comments, Ms. Champion, that you made about fairness, comparing this to other projects, the scope of the amenities versus the scope of the incentives. I'm just curious, you had at one point in time requested information about the Walgreens project, which is the corner of Elmwood and Clinton on the other corner, away from, if you will, on the north side of Elmwood Avenue. And I'm wondering if you did have an opportunity to review that in building the Walgreens project, the sidewalk amenities that were conditions of that approval was a total of approximately 4,200 linear feet of sidewalk for that. And I believe that your proposal, your client's proposal, I should say, other than the sidewalks that they're required to put in front of their property, have an additional about 2,200 linear feet of sidewalk. Did you have an opportunity to look at that information?
Yes, we understand that Walgreens offered more sidewalks. We think that the Walgreens project is different than this project. Again, we're within the square footage thresholds. We're actually building under what would otherwise be allowed at the site. Our anchor tenant is currently a conditionally permitted use at the site. The additional uses that we are asking for as part of our incentive package completely relate and are completely appropriate and in line with the existing development in that area. So it's a completely different project, and there are no two incentive zoning projects and applications that are the same. I think the board recognizes this, right? I'm sure hate when people say you're setting precedent on every little thing that you're doing.
I'd absolutely agree with you.
I'm sure you're not looking for Walgreens to be your precedent, and we don't think it is either. We think this is a different project with different components and different issues, and again, we think that what we're offering is fair and appropriate based on the incentives that we're requesting.
And there is a great deal of discretion that the town board has to apply, absolutely.
Correct.
Now, in addition to the amenities, I know there's been discussions and agreements that have been made on what we would call in-kind services that the DeMarco Group has in the past participated in as good corporate citizens and neighbors, and we are happy to continue that process. I know I have not been involved specifically with the itemization of the work that's going to be done on the community building, but I know Louise has met with our team, and we have a work list of things that we are happy to do in the community building. And I know recently there has been brought to our attention some deferred maintenance that exists around a retention pond that the town owns and operates. Specifically, there's some wooden barriers, guardrail barriers that we are more than happy to participate in correcting that and cleaning that up. In fact, I spoke briefly with Mike Guyon this afternoon about that project. So those types of things we're happy to do to enhance and improve and when necessary, repair and replace some of the infrastructure around town. So that is aside from the amenity package, but I just wanted to make sure that the town and citizens of Brighton know that the DeMarco Group has stepped up in the past and are willing, ready, and able to continue to do that in-kind services in the future. So, thank you.
Right. And all
But
of
those
that-
those are not part of the amenity package? Okay.
They could be formalized, though, if that was.
They
if that
either
was
have to be
intent.
formalized or they're not part of the analysis at all,
Okay.
okay?
But I do acknowledge the DeMarco Group has been generous with their equipment and their personnel and making other projects happen in this town. So I do acknowledge that, and I don't
Thank you.
want to take anything away from you as far as that.
I'd like to, after listening to my colleagues, I'd just like to summarize for all of us, a couple of things. Just rolling back a little bit in history. This 11 and a half acres was sold to the state of New York, unbeknownst to us. Didn't matter because we weren't part of the deal. They came in here to meet with us in the town council and let us know that they had just purchased these 11 and a half acres for $850,000 of your tax dollars. And we're sitting here in utter shock saying, okay, do you guys realize if you go down to the corner of Westfall and South Clinton, turn right and go down to the bottom of the hill, you have over on the right side about 52 acres of state-owned land known as DSSO. And I said it must have at least 15 acres of beautiful landscape grass that must be mowed all the time. Did you guys ever think, this is the Property and Facilities Department in the state of New York out of Albany, did you ever think about maybe building over there Empire State College instead of on this 11 and a half acres, which you've just now taken off our tax rolls? So we get Zippo from this whole deal. They sit here very meekly and they said, well, we didn't think about that. And we said as a council, we'd like to have you go back and rethink that. Down the road, they put it back, sold the land, the DeMarco Group bought it, and are now proposing to use it properly for commercial use. It's already on the tax rolls, so we're getting revenue from this. If they build this, which I personally feel is a very good project, and I think most of us do, it's proper use of this land, which is commercial land, directly across from Tops Plaza. That's the deal going. It's already generating revenue. If they build this, we're going to get a lot more revenue from that for the town. And it's proper utilization of this land. Okay? Now, the point to be made here is we're discussing incentives, which is what the developer is asking for vis-a-vis in connection with that. What are the amenities? What are they going to do for the town? So that's what we're really discussing right now. Now, what came in just today was a report from Fisher Associates, saying questions there are having to do with basically traffic and so on. So we need to address that. And as Councilman DePonzio's question, that's something we got to address up front. That doesn't mean the project is not good. It's a very good project. It's just that we're going to have to get these things addressed before we move forward. But I think having said that, all in all, it has good merit. It is a good, proper utilization of those lands. That's what we're looking for.
Thank you, Councilman Volk.
Yeah. Now, now that we've been doing all the talking up here as your council, is there anyone in the audience who would like to add a few comments or ask questions? Or have you any need of clarification? Or do you have a new idea with regard to this hearing? Anyone? Okay. Louise, Jason, anything else?
I'm good.
Chris? No? Ken? Ramsey?
I'm almost set. Thank you.
Okay.
Just to be clear, are we holding the public hearing then open until these issues are resolved, or is the public hearing now closed?
I'm afraid we better, simply, in fairness to you and in fairness to the public, really. It's not we're changing spots and stripes here. It's just that let's get this settled down and move on with this project. It's a good project, and that's my opinion. But it's just, these are things, these are details we need to address, and we owe that to the public, really. And we owe it to you.
Understood.
I think we can close it if the board is so interested.
All right.
Take the information.
Fair enough.
Take the information on the traffic study offline, and presuming that it answers the questions, we would be heading towards being able to make a seeker recommendation then.
Great, thank you. And we'll be prompt with our response on the traffic
With
comment
that, we'll
letter.
declare this public hearing closed, all right? And move on to the next steps.
Okay, thank you all. Good night.
Get it going. Thank you. Bet. All right, we need to get the supervisor back in here. He's probably wondering, have they left? Could someone retreat? Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you, Jim. Can we continue with the meeting? Okay. The next public hearing tonight concerns a proposed amendment to the incentive zoning application previously approved by this town board for the University of Rochester's South Campus Institutional Plan Development Project. The university has requested a delay in a traffic study that is required under the terms of that approval from the first quarter of 2017 and now to June of 2018. Dan, has the necessary legal notice been given in this matter?
Yes, Supervisor, notice was in the August 10th edition of the Post.
Thank you. And presumably it's posted as well. Legal notice having been given, I hereby declare this public hearing to be open. Is there anyone here to speak on behalf of the university?
Hi, my name is Bruce Bashwiner. I'm the Senior Associate Vice President for University Facilities and Services, here to speak on behalf of the university.
Good evening.
Hi, how are you? So what we're requesting is an extension out until June of 18. The purpose of the request is with the significant number of construction projects in and around the university campus, which have had a significant impact on traffic, we feel that we're going to get a much more accurate outcome from the study once those construction projects are completed. So our commitment is to move forward with that, have it finished before June of 18. Most likely we'll do it in the spring. Several of the projects are continuing on. The projects that I'm talking about are the Elmwood Avenue Bridge project, the Wilson Boulevard work related to the RG&E upgrades, the impact of Mount Hope, the impact of Ford, and then of course the impact of Wilson Boulevard.
Thank you. Does that relate at all as well to the impact of the ongoing I-390, 590? Is that a part of?
We believe it is a part, and the consultants that we reached out to perform this study also echoed that they had concerns about that project having an impact on the outcomes of the study.
But do we anticipate that work to be completed by June 2018?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't have that. We
Okay.
believe it is.
Okay. Yeah, the expectation was that this approval, which the town board did grant through incentive zoning and for which the town will be receiving significant amenity payments, anticipated potential build-out of as much as over 2 million square feet over a large area owned by the university between East River Road and Crittenden. During that extended build-out period, the expectation was that every 5 years, a traffic study would be performed to give up-to-date data to all parties that would be useful in terms of review of the projects that the university would propose within that area during the course of what would be a long-term potential build-out. So, as I understand it, the plan then would be that that 5-year cycle would begin in June of 2018, so that the next traffic study would be conducted by June of 2023.
Correct.
Okay. Any more that you would like to say on behalf of the university?
Yep, we're committed to doing the study. We just want to make sure that when we do move forward with it, the outcome is accurate and represents what we hold needed to represent and not be impacted in a negative way by the current construction projects.
Great. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address the board concerning this concerning this public hearing? We are holding this public hearing because under our incentive zoning law, when there are material changes to an incentive zoning approval, that incentive zoning process requires a public hearing, and amendments do as well. Are there any questions from the board or from council concerning, or from the town planner concerning this proposal?
Supervisor, I'd just like to note the state DOT site lists fall of 2017 as completion date for the 390 project.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Dan. Good.
I don't have a question, but it sounds very appropriate. It doesn't make sense to do a traffic study when the traffic hasn't been resettled again after the development.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Any further questions or comments, either from the audience or from the board? Hearing none, I declare this public hearing closed. The board has a resolution in front of it. Jim, would you like to make that motion?
In regard to the amendment to the incentive zoning application, I move on the resolution as prepared by the attorneys of the town requesting a delay in the next required traffic study date from the first quarter 2017 to June of 2018.
Second?
Any further discussion? Hearing none, Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DePonce?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. Thank you. Finally, our third public hearing of the evening relates to the proposed community choice aggregation local law of 2017. We're going to hold this public hearing tonight, but I do have to advise everyone, and we will be keeping a record of the public hearing. I do have to advise everyone that legal notice there was a technical defect in the legal notice for tonight's meeting. So we're going to hold the hearing, We're going to hold the hearing. We will have a transcript of that. But at the end of tonight's hearing, we are going to take action on a resolution to hold a new public hearing at our first meeting in September, the second Wednesday in September, at which time the transcript of tonight's hearing will be specifically included in the record. And we will continue a public hearing that night, and then I would anticipate that evening taking action on this proposed local law. So having said that, I declare this public hearing to be open on the proposed community choice aggregation local law of 2017. Let me just say a little bit about community choice aggregation, and I imagine that some of the folks that are here will do the same. But community choice aggregation is a procedure recently authorized by the state following a pilot program in Westchester County, under which municipalities can, through local law, authorize participation in a community choice aggregation plan that authorizes basically a managed entity to distribute power at a significant savings to customers being served through traditional utilities. It also allows them to purchase renewable energy through community choice aggregation. It is something that has been tried now for several years in Westchester County, and based on the success there, state law has authorized it to be considered in other areas. And a number of jurisdictions have, well, a few jurisdictions in this area have taken action, others are considering it. So with that, I will open the floor. Is there anyone that would like to address the town board concerning this proposed local law? Robin.
Thank you very much. My name is Robin Wilt. I live at 2695 East Avenue. And I have a letter that I have copies for members of the board. This is, and it also has supporting documentation. This is in support of the proposed community choice aggregation local law of 2017. As a resident and interested citizen of Brighton, I want to express my support and commitment to the proposed community choice aggregation law of 2017. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, New Yorkers pay the fourth highest energy prices in the contiguous United States. In addition, the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, NYSERDA, offers the opportunity through its Clean Energy Communities program to earn awards and recognition, as well as potential access to up to $250,000 in grant funding with no local cost share in support of additional clean energy projects to city, town, village, and county governments that demonstrate clean energy leadership. To me, these two factors alone make a commitment to community choice aggregation a fiscal no-brainer for the town of Brighton and an ethical imperative for our community in terms of environmental stewardship and sustainability. CCA puts control of choosing energy supply into local hands so that our energy sources as Brightonians can reflect our priorities as a community that is committed to environmental stewardship and sustainability. At the same time, because we'll continue to operate with an independent utility responsible for energy delivery and billing, it will not require the investment of infrastructure and maintenance that makes a municipally owned utility so daunting. The pooling of our individual and municipal purchasing power, with that power, the CCA should also allow Brighton to benefit from more affordable energy rates. The pilot CCA program in New York State, the Westchester Power CCA, which is initiated by the nonprofit Sustainable Westchester in 2016, supplies approximately 110,000 electrical customers in 20 participating municipalities in Westchester County. The results have been to produce 500 million kilowatt hours of 100% renewable power, provide approximately 45 million in cost savings over 3 years, and achieve a 300,000 ton reduction in the carbon footprint over the cooperating jurisdictions. With Lima and Brockport also firmly on the path towards CCA participation, adopting the proposed community choice aggregation local law will place Brighton squarely in line with Governor Cuomo's reforming energy vision REV strategy to build a stronger economy and foster a healthier environment. It's an opportunity of which we should avail ourselves in order to honor Brighton's commitment to its Envision plan to implement sustainable policies. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. And I know Dan had to leave the room for a moment, but we will enter all of this material, including the attachments, into the record of the public hearing. We did have someone earlier that wanted to speak. Come on up. And again, welcome to your first Brighton Town Board meeting.
Thank you. My name is Heather O'Donnell. I'm a Brighton resident since 2015. I'm here also in support of the community choice aggregation as a concerned citizen. I'm advocating this because it would give Brighton an opportunity to utilize renewable clean energy sources. This kind of program could affect our energy choices in 3 areas. It would give the citizens more power over how they choose their energy sources. It would stimulate our local economies, providing stimulus for green jobs, green energy jobs. And most importantly for me personally, it would be an effective way at a local level to combat the negative impact of climate change. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, I would note, if anybody has written comments that they would like to include in the record, all they need to do is hand them to the town clerk. Is there anyone else that would like to address the town board? Yes.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Teresa McGowan. I live at 96 Westland with my husband, Tim. And about a year ago, we put on solar panels, which we're very excited to have, but we also are in favor of this program, this community choice aggregation. We believe it's a win-win for Brighton because it would give us the power as a community to choose our own energy supplier and negotiate a lower price, so money. Suppliers that we would be able to find suppliers that use renewable energy so we can keep fossil fuels in the ground. And it will help our wider community grow local jobs by encouraging local renewable energy production. So we are in favor of it and hope that you vote yes.
Thank you. Yes.
Hello. My name is Liza, and I speak simultaneously on behalf of the Rochester Youth Climate Leaders.
Liza, could I just ask you to give your last name as well?
Summers.
Thanks.
And I live at 60 Bonnie Bray Avenue, if that's also pertinent information. I speak simultaneously on behalf of the Rochester Youth Climate Leaders, of which I'm a member and also simply as a resident of Brighton. And I advocate strongly for community choice aggregation. And I won't profess to know everything there is to know about it, but from what I understand, the system is beneficial both sustainably and socioeconomically. For decision-making regarding energy use to rest in the collective hands of the community is a step towards more sustainable energy use as well as a social step forwards. And no taxes would be raised. In fact, taxes on gas and electric bills may well be lowered. And as was mentioned, jobs would be created. And the community would be presented with the opportunity to transition towards cleaner energy sources, which is of increasingly pressing importance. And I also think that Brighton generally prides itself on being well-educated, conscientious, and forward-looking, and it would be a motivation for surrounding towns or counties to transition to CCA as well, if they were to see a town as respectable as Brighton doing it first. That's about all I have to say.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Chelsea Hunt. I live at 155 Winter Greenway. I have been a Brighton resident for 3 weeks and 2 days.
Welcome.
Thank you.
To what is probably your first Brighton Town Board
It
meeting.
is, thank you. I have previously...
That may be a new record.
Well, I'm highly motivated. My husband and I packed up our 3 daughters, all under age 6, last month, our dog, our cat, and our tarantula, and we moved here to Brighton in great part because of climate change. Also partly because my 5-year-old is going to be starting kindergarten, so we really liked the look of Brighton schools. But in Florida, where we're from, Central Florida, we have been very disappointed, to put it mildly, with the way our local and state officials have approached climate change and the threats that are coming to where my house was at 25 feet above sea level. So that was big and scary, and we fortunately had the opportunity to leave. So I am here in support of the CCA, and I suspect I'll be back in September to voice my support then too. So, yes.
Thank you very much, and thank you, for getting involved so quickly after moving up here. That really is a great example for folks to follow. So thank you for coming out tonight. Yes.
And I look forward to seeing you in my office soon to license your dog.
Okay.
Can you get a tarantula?
No, we do not license tarantulas.
Good evening. My name is Ruth Ferguson. This is also my first time here tonight. I'm here on behalf of advocating for AAC. I just did that dyslexically, CCA. So I am also Liza's mother, and in the past 8 months in which we have witnessed the enormity of a vacuum of leadership from the top, I'm pushing my children into that vacuum to fill it, and I would just encourage all of us to take leadership. I have to say it's really exciting when we look across the nation, and in this vacuum of leadership, we're seeing communities come together to lead. And just recently in Boston, our president inspires nationalists. Well, there was a movement in which I guess 8 or 10 nationalists made a speech, but the local community brought forth 40,000 people. So our president might take us out of the climate accord, which he has, but we as a community, as a Brighton community, can come forward. And it doesn't matter what agreements he pulls out of, because we can still lead. And even if I weren't to benefit economically from CCA, even if I weren't to benefit economically, even if I were just to break even, the idea that we as a community would have this ethical goal of leading New York State, the wider community, to its renewable energy goals is exciting to me. And I just want to say, this is our moment. I'm in support.
Thank you. Come on up.
Is it this one?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hello, I'm Eric Hittinger. I live at 71 Warrington Drive over here in Brighton. I also teach energy policy and economics at RIT. So I just wanted to add a few things. So first of all, I'm in support of the proposal. I think it's a great idea, and for the reasons that were already outlined. But I would add a few comments to what's already been said. And one is the flexibility that this enables customers to have. People have talked about how it gives choices, and it basically would only give additional choices to the people of Brighton, because depending upon how it was set up administratively, people would either opt into the program automatically or they would opt out and choose to join. But customers can always opt back into the traditional RG&E mix, so no one is effectively at a loss. Everyone can go back to programs that they already have. One other thing I would add, as this is considered, hopefully when it's considered, when an administrator is chosen, a lot of these programs usually go with 100% renewable electricity as the source of the power. An alternative option that may be less expensive in the Rochester area might be a zero emissions mix, which would basically be the renewables with nuclear power. That may be less popular with people. I don't want to start a fight about nuclear power, but given the existence of Ginna, that may be a less expensive option, and the administrator would be able to calculate this and offer different alternatives for the town to consider. However, it may not be the cheapest alternative, and one of the reasons for that is because of the huge federal and state subsidies on solar power. So in New York State, if you put up solar panels, the federal government, the state government combined pay for almost half of that electricity cost, which oftentimes makes it cheaper than whatever we're currently getting. And so frankly, as far as the town of Brighton is concerned, if the US government and the state wants to pay for half of our electricity costs, I would propose that we let them do that, right? Especially if that's cheaper than our current mix. So yeah, while the CCA sometimes seems like a scam that we're pulling over on people, if the federal and state governments, these higher level governments want to pay for our electricity and give us a new administrative setup for how we pay for and distribute the electricity, I think it's worth doing. So anyway.
Thank you very much.
Don't leave.
Okay.
Let's have your name again.
Eric Hittinger.
Eric, you may be the designated oracle on energy sources tonight.
I usually am.
Here's the thing. People tune in and tune out on this broadcast. Here's the thing. CCA, on the surface, and I'm not doubting it, is a wonderful thing. But let's talk about if somebody in Brighton signs up, where does CCA go to identify these various sources of renewable energy?
Ken, do you want to address sort of where we're at tonight? Because I think it's important that this is really just the very first step.
Sure.
But this is important question.
Right. So the state has authorized municipalities to, in turn, authorize programs under which a municipality could set up a program where the community as a whole would have an option of coming together to select an energy provider. The way that we have drafted our proposed local law that is being considered is to set up that program as what is traditionally called an opt-out program, which means that everyone in the town, unless you said you didn't want to participate, would have the benefit of the program. You could opt out to say, I still want to use RG&E in my traditional service provider, or opt out and use somebody else, but that local law would give the town the ability to set up the program so that it could then establish a relationship with energy providers. That's the stage we're at right now. If the local law were passed, it would simply allow the creation of that administration. It wouldn't put it into effect right away. There is certainly some administrative work that would need to occur both from a funding and staffing level and from a processing level. And of course, a very important part of the program is educating the public on what's going on and what those options are. And then, of course, the negotiations and shopping around for energy providers. So there's a whole lot left to happen before this program gets active in our community, but this is clearly the first step that authorizes...
And a necessary first step.
Absolutely. Necessary first step to authorize the program to go forward in the town of Brighton. The only other thing that I'll mention is that in terms of the literature I've read on programs, community aggregation programs that have been sampled around the country, is that opt-out programs are the only ones that are successful. If you have a program where you simply allow people to elect to join the community aggregation program, those typically fail for lack of participation. And so that's why I think the town supervisor asked me to draft this law in a way that would have an opt-out provision.
And I think that particular point ties back to something that Robin said in her initial comments. She used the word pooling. And, and that resonates to me because the town of Brighton currently is part of an energy purchasing consortium for our own power with other municipalities. By pooling, we're able to get a more attractive rate for our electricity. And that's why it's important, as we've heard reference to the village of Brockport, the town of Lima. It's important to have as many participating municipalities, but as Ken was alluding, as many residential utility customers as possible within those municipalities. Then you have bargaining power. Then you have that strength in numbers that makes it possible to get the attractive rates. I hope that addressed the questions that you have, Jim, but it really is the very first step. And one of the most important factors is the process of, because this is a business. This is, this through state law and through some of the changes in the utilities laws in New York, this authorizes a new business, different. Some people have asked me, and again, Robin's comments addressed, this is not a municipally owned utility. This is a new independent, but it is effectively similar to a utility that will have a management arrangement with, at least what has been done in Westchester with a management company that has managed the program. So those are all some details that will be coming through. One of the reasons this is not something that's going to happen overnight, but this first step of considering, and I certainly hope adopting, a local law is the necessary first step towards getting there, and we'll have to answer questions.
So let's let the professor answer my question.
Sure,
which
yes.
is
Yes, so
the knowledge and expertise of CCA. How do they determine this way or that way in terms of a source?
Well, so usually, let me actually add to what they said, which is segueing into an answer to your question, and that is that it's already the case in New York, which is an energy choice state. We already have the options. Every homeowner can choose their electricity supplier, right? You get these little things in the mail, like get 100% renewable or get the cheapest rate, or get, we guarantee a rate 10% lower than RG&E, whatever. They have all sorts of different offers. So we're already an electricity choice state. The difference with the CCA is that they have the amalgamation of all of the customers. And when you're just one customer and you use a couple hundred kilowatt hours, no one really cares much about you. They're not going to offer you a good rate. But when you say, hey, we have 98% of the town of Brighton residents, and we want to buy power really inexpensively, companies...
And the town of Lima, and the village of Brockport, and maybe, hopefully, some others.
Right, and one of the biggest savings they have, actually, is just on rather boring administrative savings, like the customer acquisition costs. So when they send you a bunch of envelopes in the mail, it costs them a lot of money to get the customers. Then they lose the customers. Between us, I actually had signed up for 100% renewable electricity service, but they were I thought it was too expensive, so I switched back to the RG&E mix, which, by the way, we live in the cleanest electricity grid in the country right now, so that's good, which also makes it easier to get zero carbon electricity. But I just bought some offsets. But basically, the existing plans that are targeted to individual homeowners are kind of expensive because mostly homeowners don't care, and because they have all these administrative costs that would be reduced in a CCA. But basically, where do they go to get the power? The administrator is usually somebody very familiar with electricity markets, and they just go out and buy power. They negotiate on behalf of the customers and try and find the lowest rate within the specifications set by the law.
Yeah. And this is for the public edification, thanks to Robin's research. The state of New York is $18.50 an average retail price of electricity. That's per kilowatt hour. In the state of Washington, that's a very expensive state to live in. They are the cheapest in the country, $9.68. Ours is $18.50. Go figure. Go figure.
So I have to throw out that average is heavily weighted into New York City.
That. I'm still
Right.
saying this is the state of New York.
Yeah, right, yeah. Anyway, I'll stop, Professor.
There's an opportunity.
Thank you.
There's an opportunity here. Is what
Thank
we're
you
saying.
very much.
So, okay.
Is there anyone? Yes, come on up.
My name is Melissa Carlson. I am not a resident of Brighton, but I am part of the Rochester People's Climate Coalition, and we have talked to several of the town committees about CCA. We are proposing to be an administrator along with Jewel, who is the one who is the administrator for the Westchester Power. I have delivered to the town 100 postcards from citizens supporting CCA, and I've got another 2 dozen.
Thank you very much. I'll give these to Dan to have them entered into the record.
I have the first batch.
I'll make sure you get them.
I also want to clarify a couple of the finer points. The law that is being proposed authorizes you to aggregate the power demand for the town, all the residents, because when the project goes out to bid, the administrator has to be able to tell the bidder, we have X many kilowatt hours, and the utility has to be able to tell somebody that. And right now, nobody has access to how much power all the town residents use. So by passing this law, you authorize yourself to select an administrator and to aggregate the power. No commitment. There is no commitment until the contracts are turned in at the bid, and even then you can say, I don't like that bid, never mind. So this just allows you to get the ball rolling. You said significant cost savings. There are some places where I think they've saved 50 cents a month. We don't know until the bids come in. The Westchester Power did average savings 10%. They are also really high prices to start out with. As you mentioned, the New York City weighted high average. And the way that you get opted in or out is everyone that is on the utility as their default supplier is automatically opted in. People who have chosen to be part of an ESCO, they have a contract somewhere else, they are not opted in. They may choose to stop their contract or to opt in at another time when their contract is over. Right now, about 75% of the New York State population is involved, has the default utility. So that's what we're counting on. And there would be, if an administrator is chosen who is a third party, there is no cost to any of the towns, the municipalities. It is the administrator who does the educating of the public. And that is something that we have been doing, the Climate Coalition, as reach out and inform people what this is going on, and after the law is passed, we will continue doing that too with many communities. We are happy that the city announced their intent to explore this last week, and I'm sure that's going to motivate a lot more people to say, this is worthwhile, because once you get even this town plus Lima plus Scottsville and Geneva, those are the other ones that have also passed similar laws. We're just beginning to nick the surface of having some a pool to negotiate with, and once we get Rochester in there, once we get up to 60,000 or more, then the utilities really start looking at the suppliers really start looking at us favorably.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good clarification.
Margie?
Good evening. I'm Margie Pete. My address is 129 Clink Road. I am here on behalf of ColorBrightonGreen.org. As most of you know, Color Brighton Green was formed as a result of the 2008 Green Brighton Task Force, and it was recommended that an independent agency be created to do some work to organize citizens and organizations to take action for our environment. Some of the things that Color Brighton Green has done over the last several years include Curb Your Car Week, which we conduct twice a year to try to get people out of their cars and onto bikes and public transportation. We have a speaker and film series at the library every winter. This year it stretched into spring because there were so many different topics that we wanted to cover. We do special recycling at the Brighton Farmers Market, things that people can't typically recycle that they can bring to us and we get kept out of the landfills. We have an annual eco fair, and we have a website and Facebook page where we engage over 1,000 people on a regular basis in what we're doing. Color Brighton Green is a member of the Rochester People's Climate Coalition, which Melissa just talked about. I am Color Brighton Green's representative to the Rochester People's Climate Coalition, and we've been working for over 18 months to promote the idea of community choice aggregation. And our whole interest in that is so that we can increase the amount of renewable energy use in order to reduce carbon emissions in our area. Over the last several months, I've had the opportunity to talk to several Brighton residents about community choice aggregation. One of the most recent experiences where I got to talk to quite a few people was at the Clean Sweep event. And everybody I talked to about community choice aggregation was anxious to fill out the postcards that Melissa just gave you. And they all saw the idea as a no-brainer, something that we definitely should be doing in Brighton, and we're surprised some people thought we already were. So Color Brighton Green is very proud that the town of Brighton is proposing a local law for the community choice aggregation. By proposing this law, Brighton is continuing its track record of protecting the environment that our residents feel is so important to their standard of living. The town is also committed to be a climate-smart community, and as part of that commitment to create a climate action plan, which staff is working on now. Community choice aggregation participation can help Brighton to meet its commitment to reduce carbon emissions by procuring renewable energy for residents who are using the default supplier of energy. Community choice aggregation enables the town to aggregate the buying power of its residents together with residents of other participating local governments in order to obtain lower-priced electricity that is hopefully also renewable. 3 other local governments in our region have passed a CCA local law to date. Melissa mentioned them earlier, Geneva, Scottsville, and Lima. And we're very proud that the town of Brighton is willing to be another early adopter of community choice aggregation. I believe, and on behalf of Color Brighton Green, we believe that Brighton residents have everything to gain and nothing to lose with community choice aggregation. In Westchester County, the electric supply costs were 5 to 10% lower than the previous year when they implemented their first year of the CCA. In Westchester County, 14 of 20 participating local governments chose to obtain 100% renewable energy for their residents, significantly reducing their carbon footprint. Also in Westchester County, the community choice aggregation electricity supply contracts were for a 2-year period, stabilizing the cost of their energy. The community choice aggregation model doesn't require residents to participate, as Eric already explained. When a community choice aggregation moves forward and obtains cheaper, cleaner energy, residents will be notified, and if they decide they want to keep the energy supply chosen by their utility company, they can opt out of the community choice aggregation. As a town supervisor from another local town recently said, this is a chance to impact the pocketbooks of our residents. But even more important from the perspective of Color Brighton Green is a chance to impact the climate for our future generations. I urge the town board to consider and pass this local law, and Color Brighton Green looks forward to working with the Rochester People's Climate Coalition and helping to educate our community about community choice aggregation. Thank you.
Thank you, Margie. Is there anyone else that would like to address the board on this proposed local law? Yes, come on up.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having this public hearing and considering this law proposal. My name is Neely Kelly, and I am not a resident of Brighton. I live in the city of Rochester. And I'm here to encourage the town of Brighton to take the step forward to enact CCA legislation. Much like the city of Rochester, the Mayor Lovely Warren, recently decided to do it. She had a press conference last week announcing the intention to move CCA forward in the city of Rochester. We have to act. The federal government right now is dismantling all climate solutions as quickly as possible, and it is up to local governments such as yourself to move these legislations forward. When my 11-year-old daughter was 8 years old, she said, "Mom, you were really lucky to grow up in a time without climate change." And if you're following climate news, you know that things are getting worse by the hour. I'm sorry, so I encourage you to act. And the other thing that I wanted to say while up here, there's been a lot of talk about the grid and where's this gonna come from and how are we gonna source it? And one of the things that I wanted to say tonight is there are 2 wind projects within an hour of Rochester that combined would provide the equivalent of 110,000 homes of electricity to the grid. They need our support, and if anyone here would like to learn more about them, I would be happy to share with you, but they are Lighthouse Wind and Heritage Wind, I believe in the County of Livingston and the Yates County, and that is one potential source of energy for towns that adopt CCA. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Neely. Is there anyone? Yes. Well, let me just see if there's anyone else that hasn't already spoken that would like to address the board.
I just
if you would just again state your name and address.
Yes, the name is Eric Hittinger. I live on 71 Warrington Drive in Brighton. Sorry, I'll keep this brief, but I wanted to add the Clean Energy Communities program that NYSERDA put together recently. I don't know how much the town has looked into that, but
very much so.
Okay. And so you know that there's 10 action items. If you do 4, you're able to get the $250,000 from the state, which could go towards, anything like the RG&E buying the street lighting system and fist fighting with RG&E over the LEDs and whatnot.
You've been following.
I have one outside of my house, and I've considered getting a step ladder. I'm not going to do it, but boy, I really just shake my fist at all of the energy that's being wasted 24/7, basically, in the outside. But so that would be another potential benefit of this, is that it could put us further towards a big chunk of change. Again, if the state is offering money for clean energy programs that can save the town and residents money, I think that's a reasonable thing to pursue. Thank you.
Thank you. I wish there was a guarantee that simply getting those 4 would automatically get us as much as $250,000. But what we do, the Clean Energy Community Program is an important program in and of itself. The 10 steps, and we certainly are committed, and I've been working with Ramsey and Mike Guy on our town engineer to reach that milestone. We have accomplished a couple of them already. But not only will it make Brighton a more sustainable community, and I speak a lot about the core values of the town of Brighton. I talked earlier about diversity. We all know education is a core value of the town of Brighton, but Sustainability, I really believe, for our success to the future, but also for our success today, is and must continue to be a core value of the community. So besides the fact, just like has been mentioned, the potential is there for some significant cost savings, and that's no small potatoes. But the potential for enhancing our sustainability and reducing the carbon footprint of this community and others, and I hope others like the City of Rochester will follow our leadership on this, but those are important. Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to address the board in this matter? I see the town attorney looks like he'd like to address.
Just so that you have a full and complete proposed local law in front of you, I was proofing it just now at the table and see that there are two sections that we did not change from the original draft form law, and they are in section 4B, which is supposed to identify the classes of eligible customers who could opt out or who would be participants in the aggregation program. And so taking a look at Appendix C of the Public Service Commission CCA order, those classifications should be, and that section which is bracketed right now with sort of faint print there, should read electric residential service and electric general service small use and gas general service classes offered by Rochester Gas and Electric Corporation. That's what that should say, and so the board has that to look at. And then the other section is in section 8B of the proposed local law, and it is relating to the composition of the CCA advisory group that the town would put together. Again, it says relevant municipal staff positions, suggests finance director, commissioner of public works, town clerk, town supervisor. I would just note that we will need to fill that in before we adopt it. The board may wish to consider indicating positions or positions and their designee. So like Commissioner of Public Works or his designee, perhaps chair of the Sustainability Oversight Committee, perhaps a town board member to act as liaison to that committee as well, or that advisory group as well. So something that we should fill in before we do the official public hearing at our next meeting.
Good, thanks. Good input, Ken. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to address the public hearing? Any board members that would like to address this at this time?
Bill, we've had several discussions of this at sustainability. I've spoken with the Marty. Appreciate Melissa coming into Public Works as well.
We came into Public Works,
I agree. This is very much a no-brainer. I think there are administrative issues. One question I do have is what control do we have over those administrative aspects? That will select an administrator and then they take it from there, or do we approve their program in detail?
There would be a contract with an administrator, and if we don't like the contract or if we don't like the administrator, presumably we wouldn't sign it. And I certainly think we would have counsel reviewing that agreement to make sure that it afforded us the opportunity to, on an ongoing basis, be satisfied with the management of the program. Ken, your thoughts?
The role of that CCA advisory group that I was just talking about, the group that you have to sort of determine the composition of, it is established to develop and review CCA-related proposals, act as the municipality's agent in awarding said proposals, and forward information regarding such awards to the town board for ratification. So you have this advisory group reviewing everything and acting as a go-between. And then ultimately, of course, the decisions are for the town board.
I've long maintained that government and local government in particular is all simply about group buying, and this is just a natural for that. So I'm very much in favor of it, but I do have this image, and another a person pointed this out to me today, that of someone who perhaps mindlessly pays their utility bill every month, and all of a sudden it comes in with a different color. And it's just, am I going to be affronted by the idea that here's another energy poacher trying to get my business the same way it happened to me last time, that somehow I inadvertently signed up with a different ESCO, and then realized after about 2 years that I was paying about 40% too much for my energy over RG&E. So those administrative aspects I'm sensitive to, how people, if they do opt in by default, that they're able to opt out without penalty and this sort of thing. Just sensitive to how, and maybe it's just our challenge to educate the public before this occurs. But I think the concept is terrific, and we have to.
Yeah. Well, it is, education is an important part of the rollout, if you will, of this. Because you're right. And certainly some of the more unsavory players, some of the door-to-door types, do give in some cases, I don't mean to say they're all problem, but they've left a bad taste in some people's mouths. So it is going to be important educating. The opt-out is crucial, and of course is an integral part of this. If someone, for whatever reason, wants to go back to another program, they can. Any other comments from my colleagues on the board?
Good discussion.
Well, the People's Climate Coalition has, and Green, Color Brighton Green has met with me, with our town engineer and other town staff on numerous occasions. I really appreciate the time that everybody is taking and bringing up folks from Jewel Energy, whom we've also had a chance to speak with to learn their experience in the Westchester market in running a pilot program, and how the state law and our own, frankly, our energy supply conditions here in this area, will affect our ability to proceed forward with a CCA. And I'm certainly excited and encouraged, but a little bit daunted. It will be a major task, and having capable, knowledgeable people with the ability to manage an enterprise of this scope is going to be important. I think that's why it has been successful in Westchester so far. I was very impressed with the Jewel Energy. And by the way, Jewel, Joule, is the spelling of that for you electrical engineers out there. That is a unit of energy, and don't ask me to say any more about it, because I will reveal my utter ignorance when it comes to such matters. But we've heard reference to climate change. Climate change is real, and sustainability is one of the critical ways that, I want to keep, because I heard from different speakers tonight exactly the same reasons that I find this so important. If we're not going to, at least for now, do some of these important things at the national level, then as I have said, you can think globally and act locally. And this is another opportunity for us to do that. So I want to thank everybody that did come in and share your various perspectives about CCA with us tonight. Anybody else before we close things for tonight? Again, after we just to clarify, after we close this, we're going to take action to set another public hearing at our next board meeting, and proceed from there, I hope, to the adoption of a local law.
I just want to say one thing that is a little bit off the subject, but since you're all here now and you might not turn the TV on when you get home, that we're going to have our electronics recycling and our shredding and recycling.
Louise, this is a public hearing, and if you would,
Excuse me, I'm so
please,
sorry.
if you, happy to have you make the announcement when we get there.
I
but
just wanted to
thanks.
make sure that
I understand. If there's nothing more, I'm going to declare this public hearing to be closed, and I'm going to ask for a motion on the resolution you have in front of you to set another public hearing in this matter.
So moved.
Louise, Jason, second. Any discussion on that? Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DeFonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Maley?
Aye. Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. All of these comments, you're welcome to come again to the next meeting. I invite you to come back to the next meeting, but even if you don't, all of your comments tonight will be included in the record of the second public hearing that we will hold before we take action on this local law. So, thanks and enjoy the rest of the evening.
October 14th.
No, September.
I'm talking
Oh.
about the recycling.
Can I have a motion to receive and file our communications?
So moved.
Second.
Sorry, who was, I couldn't hear over the room.
Chris, and, I'm sorry, Jim made the motion,
did
Chris
second.
Tonight,
Folks, can we have the conversations move out into the lobby, please? We have the rest of the meeting continue.
I appreciate
Thank you.
it, thanks. In terms of our communications tonight, did we receive any communications? Yes, we received Robin's, no, but that's part of the, hearing. We did not receive any additional communications. Tonight, we have formal notification of the final state equalization rate of 89 for the town of Brighton from the State Department of Taxation and Finance. That is the primary reason that we are in the process of doing a revaluation in the town of Brighton. It is important that that equalization rate be as close to 100 as possible for fairness for our residents, particularly as it relates to school taxes. With school districts that include multiple towns, jurisdictions that have different equalization rates, it can be challenging for our residents, particularly as our rate gets below 100. In a sense, it's good news. That reflects the fact that property values in the town of Brighton are increasing at a rate faster than we would have expected them to. So that's a good thing. But it is still important that our valuations to maintain equity in property taxation reflect that appreciation. We also have correspondence from Tom Cochran, the CEO and Executive Director of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, relating to their Business Council Best Practices report. And that's something I've begun to read and will examine. Most of those cities are larger than the town of Brighton, but some of them are small cities. And there are ideas that we can use as a municipality to provide services more efficiently. And finally, we have correspondence from Zena Lagonegro, the manager of zoning for the City of Rochester Bureau of Planning and Zoning, relating to the environmental assessment form, part 3, and negative declaration for the proposed redevelopment project at 1201 Elmwood Avenue, which is a project we've discussed in the past. It straddles the city and town of Brighton line, about 18 acres in the city, a little under 11 acres in the town of Brighton. It's the site of the Terrence Building, the very high tower on Elmwood Avenue. Ramsey, anything you'd like to add in terms of what Zena's letter means for review of the project?
Well, it really was dealing, one of the big issues with the hearing was to have a traffic light at Goodman or keeping it at Azalea. And the city council has decided to keep it at Azalea and Elmwood Avenue and not relocate it to Goodman. And I think that was one of the bigger issues that was discussed during the process, and that is discussed in the negative declaration. The negative declaration is pretty comprehensive, dealing with many issues, including the wetlands, the woodlot in the town of Brighton. As this project proceeds through our process, at some point, this town board will have to make its own findings on the environmental record in the future.
Because there are two separate applications, although it, at some sense, is one project, and I know the developer is, you know, in a lot of ways looking at it that way. There is an application pending to the city and one pending to the town of Brighton. They're being, because we have different laws than the city, different codes, they are being pursued each pursuant to the local law of the applicable jurisdiction. In Brighton, it is an incentive zoning application.
Yes, I would go on, in addition to the negative declaration being adopted by the city council, they also improved the map and code amendments for the project. They have not, at this time, approved the demolition, which is a different body.
And just to refresh everybody's memory, the Brighton portion of the project would be 11 two-unit, I'll refer to them as cottages, somewhat similar to the adjoining cottages on the western end of the Brickstone property. There would be a small commercial building, probably not too different, with space in any event and an anticipated use not too different than the building on the Brickstone property that is currently where Joey B's restaurant is located, and the meeting area that's there, that winter garden area. And it would also propose a 4-story, 80-unit moderate income. Moderate income, I think, is the term they're using. Rental building. On the city side would be a significantly larger number of rental units, some commercial properties, including a hotel, a sort of residence clubhouse facility. One of those residential buildings in particular would be a large building, although not as tall as the existing Terrace building that would be proposed to be constructed on the site of the Terrace building if the Terrace building is torn down. So there's a lot of detail in it. It is. There are two very substantial applications, and our staff has worked with city staff. The mayor and I have had discussions about the project, and some of the work we'll be doing will be joint with the city. Some of the work we'll be doing will be separate on our own project. More to follow.
Shouldn't we also add to the communications the letter we received from Timothy Faulkner?
Is that the Fisher?
It's part of the.
Was entered
That's
into the
part of
record?
public hearing.
Yeah.
No, that's included as part, and I wasn't part of that, but that will be included as part of the record of the public hearing of that public hearing.
That's what it confused me.
Uh-huh.
As well.
Yeah. Okay.
So we have a motion and a second on those items of communication. Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DeFazio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. Committee reports. Community services.
Community Services met on August 16, and we spent a considerable amount of time talking about town beautification, particularly focusing on the Town Hall campus, Monroe Avenue, and 12 Corners Triangle. I want to thank Dee Burdett and Ellen Toohey who came in, and not only are they interested to tell us what's wrong with the town, but to tell us how they're going to help us fix it. So Dee and Ellen have been out in the 12 Corners Triangle, weeding and mulching, or weeding at this point, the gardens, and they're going to work with Highway Department to plant some mums there and mulch those gardens as well. There was discussion about hanging plants there as well, and that there actually was an irrigation system apparently up on the poles, which I wasn't aware of, that is controlled with some sort of a drip irrigation alternative, so that's something we want to look at. Dee made some approach to the Allen's Creek Garden Club, found that's largely not Brighton residents, but also talked with the Garden Lovers Club of Brighton, and Sally Constein there, who who organizes that, and was hoping that we could get some help with our gardens through those folks as well. There was some discussion about improvement of garbage cans and park benches and such. Dan is going to give us an inventory of how many cans and such, and Matt Beeman is going to give us information about how much they might cost, so that Bill can, with some knowledge of what the actual expenses might be, make a presentation to community groups, and particularly the Chamber of Commerce, for some help with those. Tim Anderson of the Highway Department, committed to doing some pruning around the pergola at the 12 Corners Triangle, and we went on at length and talked about other issues in town. Weeds along the curbside, which have been an issue, and Louise has also mentioned those as being particularly unsightly in town. And I notice, now I'm very sensitive to them as I drive around town. But the reality is that those are, for the most part, the local property owners' responsibility, or if we were to organize groups of people to go out into the highways, I think it would create a very dangerous situation. Perhaps herbicides might be the most effective or expedient way of controlling them, but this is Brighton, and our feeling for the community is that our no herbicide policy is what the community wants as a whole. The U of R has volunteered some of their incoming freshmen for Wilson Day, and I'm going to be meeting them on Monday over here at the Rose Garden, and we're going to start clearing the weeds out of that area, and we're having some discussions about how to renovate that garden in general, and Louise has approached her neighborhood association there at Roselawn to help with that, and that's where the garden came from in the first place, but it needs some help, and I'm very appreciative of the U of R sending over their volunteers on Monday. Beyond beautification, we talked about the status of the parks. And Matt Beeman talked about the monitoring of invasive species and mentioned that the purple loosestrife can be seen with beetles on them, which help control them in a natural way over in the Brickyard Trail area particularly. Corbett's Glen, we have an active committee working there. We're waiting for their report and recommendations. We've had considerable erosion along the embankment there from heavy usage of the water. And the question is whether or not we have to go the way of Stony Brook and Letchworth, which has largely prohibited swimming in their waters entirely because of those erosion problems. Parking continues to be a problem, particularly in the upper part along Penfield Road there, and Matt Beeman is going to outline some options, perhaps for expanding parking, but we're going to refer that to the Glen Committee for consideration, what our options are to control parking, because we've had considerable spillover on Park Lane and Forest Hills where cars are parked. Brickyard Trail, most of the fences are gone, except those that have ground bees around them. We're going to wait till they go dormant. Farmers Market Community Center, we're hopeful for a state funding opportunity there. And the rent source inquiry law that's being considered about landlords not being permitted to discriminate against tenants who receive subsidies for their rents. And Bill is in the process of meeting with landlords and discussing their point of view. The town-wide smoking ban for town parks and properties is being reviewed by Dan Amon and Council. Again, a very lengthy meeting, and I appreciate very much the public participation there. Our next meeting will be September 20, 9:30 a.m. at Brookside.
Yes.
Has the finance been brought back to its normal time? Then the next meeting will be September 20, 9:30 a.m. at Brookside. And again, we appreciate the public's participation.
Thank you, Chris. I really appreciate the vigor and the energy and the scope that you have brought to the community services area. It's really important.
It's what people see when they drive around town.
It's so important, and I appreciate that we've had that kind of leadership. Finance Administrative Services.
Yes, Bill, Finance and Administrative Services met last Wednesday, August 16th. Each of the items that were reviewed at that meeting appear on tonight's agenda. There are a few discussion items. The first was that the committee discussed with Chad Roscoe his request for an administrative renewal of the 2015 contract with Waste Management of New York for weekly collection of solid waste and recyclables for the town refuse districts for calendar year 2018. According to the contract, we can renew that administratively without having to go back out to bid, and the FASC is in agreement with that proposal. The FASC also discussed the possibility of purchasing a tractor for the Facilities Department for snow removal and mowing at the town hall property, and the department is going to be looking into the cost and possibility of purchasing a used tractor. The theory behind purchasing a tractor would be if we can do some of the maintenance work in-house, then that'll reduce some of the contractor costs. But we have to analyze whether we have the staff power in order to maintain for snow removal and grass cutting. And finally, as Councilman Werner alluded to, we will be going back to our normal time. It's after Labor Day, so we'll be going back to Tuesdays at 3:30 in the afternoon. So our next meeting will be on Tuesday, September 5th, 3:30 in the afternoon at the Stage Conference Room, and the public is invited to attend.
Thanks, Jason. Louise, Public Safety.
Public Safety has not met since the last town board meeting. Our next get-together will be on September the 12th at 8 in the morning. The public is welcome to come.
Thank you. Jim, Public Works.
Public Works has not met since the last council meeting. Our next meeting will be on Tuesday. Correct me if I'm wrong. We talked about having this on the 5th, which is the day after Labor Day weekend. But I think we agreed we should go to the 12th, Tuesday the 12th.
That would be helpful for me, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So that's our plan. It will be, again, this time it'll be on the second Tuesday of the month on the 12th at 9 a.m.
Will be 9 a.m. Public Safety is at 8.
Yeah.
Should we, I have it down for 9:30, Jim, but I'm happy to, whatever.
Oh, wait a minute. No, we can slide it to 9:30.
Okay.
Will that give you enough time on
Yes.
public safety?
It should.
Yes.
Okay. So we'll set it at 9:30.
In fact, usually usually an hour for that committee has been enough. You want to say 9?
So 9 for Public Works.
So we'll say 9
So
for
we're
Public
back
Works.
at 9 on the 12th. I'd just like to add or build on what Chris was saying, and I know Louise will probably have this at her next Public Safety Committee meeting. I was at Corbett's Glen a week ago this past Sunday. I could not believe the popularity of that place. I walked down there and I counted 29 cars parked, some of them illegal beyond the no parking. But I must say, our police force was due diligent. They were there very diplomatic, but very firm, very instructive to the public, but getting people to leave, and they were issuing tickets. They had to, because what I saw was absolutely a public safety issue of the first order. If they had to get an emergency vehicle down in there, it would have been very, very difficult because they were parked on both sides of the road. Not only that, when you go into Glen Road, you go left down to the Corbett's Glen, but on going to the right, there were also 10 cars I counted parked that way as well. So we have a real challenge. And when my wife, my son, and daughter-in-law walked down to the Corbett's Glen, they said there were so many kids swimming in the creek, and the dogs were running up and down the trail, and not the trail, but also the embankment. It is no wonder we have an erosion issue. So we're going to have to take some kind of action to salvage that or preserve it for the public at large, really.
I agree, and I think one of the things, particularly in that park, it's important in all of our parks though, is simply people following the rules, and the rules are
That's all.
posted,
Yeah, that's all.
it is at least a first step.
Yeah.
But dogs that are off the leash, and it is particularly a problem at Corbett's Glen, do cause a safety issue, but they cause an issue with the erosion, the clambering up and down the banks of the water, as well as human footprints. And dog owners who bring their dogs to that park and other parks have to follow the rules. If they don't, they're really putting in jeopardy the ability of themselves and other, law-abiding
Residents.
dog owners
Yeah,
to continue to bring their dogs to parks. Because there are dog parks. There are parks specifically designed for dogs. We've tried to allow dogs into our parks with rules, but it's important that people follow those rules. So whether it's Corbett's Glen or elsewhere, but Corbett's Glen is really feeling the pressure of the love.
really feeling the brunt.
Yeah,
It's a very popular place, it's beautiful.
It is.
And I don't complain about the kids wanting to swim in a beautiful swimming hole like that. If I were a
But
kid,
it
I'd
does,
love it.
but
there's-
it does impact erosion, and
does?
B,
There's a safety issue.
there is absolutely a safety issue. But that committee is going to be meeting again soon, and we'll be discussing it more, Chris, in your committee, and I know also with the Community Parks, Citizens Park Advisory Board.
Chris, when the kids come from the U of R, are they only going to pull weeds?
Yes.
Because,
Yeah, we're doing no renovation per se.
There's they're going to be here for 4 hours.
So we're going to focus on the center portion of the.
Okay.
And you're working with Gary
Yes.
on all
And I
that.
confirmed
Good.
with him again today that he's going to be available. I'll be there the whole time.
Perfect, thank you. New business, Jason, reading and approval of claims.
Yes, earlier this evening, I reviewed claims totaling $536,556.48. Notable claims include to the Depository Trust Company in the amount of $28,000, representing the interest payment of the 2011 serial bond and 2007 Parks serial bond. Also to General Code Corporation in the amount of $7,732, representing the annual renewal fee for our Municity software. And also to Penny Lane Printing in the amount of $4,819.82. The printing cost for the fall brochures for the Recreation Department, which arrived in the mail within the past week, or at least at my house it did.
Yep.
The claims all appear to be in order, and I move that they be approved.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros? Councilmember DeFanzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Manley?
Aye. Chris?
Next item is to authorize the supervisor to execute a change order to amend an agreement with Woodgate Landscaping to include mowing services for a grass island site located at 13 Kimberly Drive. I move that we adopt the resolution prepared by the attorney for the town that's before us.
Second.
This is a little triangle where Kimberly comes into Grosvenor? Well, in any
Yes,
event.
yes.
Could be, yeah.
Borders on Grosvenor.
It was
Yeah.
listed on our listing of areas that our lawn mowing contractor mows in the bid specs, but it hadn't been included in the contract itself, and they've been mowing it. So we just needed to clear up that paperwork, because it's important that it be mowed.
So those little neighborhood parks like that, are those owned by the town?
Town,
Yeah, pocket parks.
yeah.
Are there
And we mowed
district
them.
charges for those maintenance charges?
No, those, for the most part, those are
General
fund charges.
Thanks.
Part of that overall contract for lawn mowing at various sites. There are a couple of those. We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none. Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DeFanzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Manley?
Aye. Jim?
Next item is to set up September 13th, 2017 as a public hearing date for a temporary amendment to the noise control local law regarding construction activities to be performed at the Bank of America at 2830 Monroe Avenue. I move on the resolution as prepared by the attorney to the town.
Second.
As longtime followers of ours know, well, the town of Brighton has a noise law, and the goal is to keep noisy activities like construction confined to hours of the day that won't impact surrounding neighbors. And those impacts can be noise, but they can also be lights, they can be backup horns, you name it. Many of these over the years have involved public highway-type projects with the state or with the county, but we've done a couple that involve private construction projects where, for one reason or another, the private property owner has had some exigent circumstances that have required them to do work at night. And this involves the Bank of America branch at 2830 Monroe Avenue, where they have expressed to the town some particular circumstances relating to some work they're planning on doing there, combination of security issues and others. And for those reasons, they have asked that we grant such a temporary amendment. There's been some back and forth, and the bank has now really narrowed down, focused the work that they would be doing after hours, and made some very real efforts to make sure that the most noisy and most impactful work is going to be done to the fullest extent possible during our normal construction hours, but still allowing them to do work beyond those times in order to get the project finished with the minimum disruption to that branch. So we'll be setting a public hearing that'll give them the opportunity to get into greater detail as to exactly how they'll do that. As always, we will expect contact person on the job site. That's one of the most important things we always expect, to make sure that if there is a problem, and we don't expect there will be, but if there is a problem, folks will know, whether it's town staff or neighbors will know who to call. So all of that would be included for consideration by the board in this proposed local law.
And Bill, I note there's a reference to a schedule that is attached, which I don't see in our materials, unless I missed it or somewhere. That could be provided to us.
Yeah.
That would be
Ken
the time,
will,
the hours, and the sort of work that they were proposing.
coordinate making sure that that's done.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to set a public hearing on September 13th. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DeFonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. Matters of the supervisor. We have the expense and revenue report for the month ended July 31st, 2017. We won't have a full report from the finance director until the end of the third quarter, so all I'm asking for is a motion to receive and file that report for the month ending July 31st.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DeFonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Mealy?
Aye. A couple of other things I do want to note. This Saturday will be Women's Equality Day, and I will be signing and presenting a proclamation in honor of Women's Equality Day, and I certainly hope that other government officials, starting at the top, will recognize the importance of Women's Equality Day, recognizing voting rights for women, which has been a template for voting rights for all Americans, and how important it is that voting rights for all Americans be protected and enhanced. So on Women's Equality Day, I encourage you to, take note of the fact that central to our democracy is voting, and voting for all.
Where are you going to be?
It's not going to be a I mean, we'll just have a proclamation. I don't know if there are events here locally. If there are, I'd like to know about them. A number of people have asked about the highway construction work on Elmwood Avenue near Lockdeville Boulevard, so I thought it would make sense to just give a quick update on that. First, it's important to note that that is a county project. Elmwood Avenue is a county highway, so the county DOT is doing that work. The project, and we did have a public information meeting on this. The county held a public information meeting here at Town Hall, and 2 years ago now, I believe, before the plans were finalized, and we didn't get a lot of people there, and it's unfortunate. Or the county didn't get a lot of people there, but it's an important project because they'll be installing a traffic signal at Elmwood and Lockdeville Boulevard, and it'll be a traffic signal with a left turn arrow. And I think we all know how important left turn arrows can be in terms of maintaining a good and safe traffic flow, getting people out of the way of through traffic. So Elmwood will widen slightly at that point to accommodate that left turn going westbound on Elmwood into Lockdeville Boulevard, and also going eastbound, turning into the Faith Temple driveway that's there. And as I mentioned, there'll be a traffic signal. I believe the county continues to anticipate that project will be completed in October. I was hoping it would be somewhat sooner, and it's great to see the progress. They've laid their curbing in there now, so they're making good progress. They had to relocate quite a bit of infrastructure, which is why there was the trenches and whatnot along that area. One other, I think, piece of good news is that when that project is completed, there will be some more sidewalk built along Elmwood Avenue, so that the gaps that we now have on sidewalks along Elmwood Avenue, particularly the north side of Elmwood Avenue, will be a little closer to being filled in. So right now, of course, traffic is narrowing down to one lane in each direction with a center lane for left turns. So drive carefully, drive safely through that area. Really drive safely everywhere. By the time we have our next town board meeting, school will be back in session. And that's always a time period where we're really concerned about the safety of our kids. We've got our traffic, the work that our police department does, but also the crossing guards who are particularly in the 12 corners, but at other main crossing points for kids. Remember that pedestrians have the right-of-way. Remember, bicyclists, if you're riding in the street, ride in the direction of traffic, and drivers give them at least 3 feet when you go around them. Really important. We have a focus on our active transportation, walking and bicycling. Some of it's on our trails, but some of it's in our streets. And make sure we keep our kids safe. Like they say, drive like your kid lives here. Yeah, very, very important. Observe the speed limit, observe the right-of-way of pedestrians. Matters of the attorney to the town.
Actually, I'm going to just speak briefly with the risk of taking a little additional time. The issue of climate change came up earlier, and I had the pleasure of spending much of the last 2 weeks up in Denali National Park in Alaska. And what's struck me was, you hear a lot and read a lot about climate change, but to see it in front of you and to learn about it in the field, it's quite striking. And if you want to really appreciate climate change, take a look at what's happening in Alaska. In Denali National Park, there's many glaciers. the glaciers in Denali. There was a geologist. It was a wonderful vacation, except for the hour I spent listening to this geologist talking about climate change, which was interesting but really depressing. Glaciers in Denali are currently receding at the rate of up to 85 feet per year. The Muldrow Glacier, which is the main glacier coming down off of Denali itself, has thinned up to 66 feet in the last 35 years. That glacier, the Muldrow Glacier, is also what they call a surging glacier. So every 50 years, that glacier picks up speed, incredible speed. We always think of glaciers as going along at a very, very glacial rate, very slow rate going forward. But the Muldrow Glacier and certain other glaciers throughout the world, but the Muldrow Glacier every 50 years surges, the face of it expands up to 100 feet per day. Think about that.
Really?
Yeah, incredible force. And it's a really important part of what happens with the environment and changing over the geology and the vegetation, of course, and everything for life in Alaska, or at least in that part of Alaska. Well, the last time it surged was the winter of 1956-57, and it surges every 50 years. Yeah, it's not showing any signs of surging, which means perhaps climate change and the thinning of the glacier has actually stopped the surging of that glacier. So what the impacts of that will be on Denali National Park, on all of the wildlife, the vegetation, et cetera, up there is sort of unknown. But the statistic that really threw me, and it wasn't an Alaska statistic, it was a statistic about one of our national parks called Glacier National Parks in Montana. Glacier National Parks is named Glacier National Park because it has a lot of glaciers. At one point it had 150 glaciers in Glacier National Park. Those glaciers now number 26. 26 of the 150 are still left. Here's what just devastates me. It is predicted that all of the glaciers in Glacier National Park will be gone by 2020. That's 3 years, folks. 3 years. Really shocking stuff, and I mean, climate change, at least from where I sit, is very, very real, and whatever we can do to hopefully stem what we've already done. That was sort of the other depressing part of the lecture, is wondering the wonder of what we can do, if we can do anything to try to reverse what we've already done. Some pretty grim facts out there about that as well. But anyway, that's my happy attorney for the town report for this evening.
Well, Ken, it is, thank you for that perspective. As I mentioned at a recent meeting, I am a member of the so-called Climate Mayors group, which is a group of mayors and other local executives in the wake of the decision to exit the Paris Climate Accords, to join together, to band together as local communities and say, this community, the Brighton community, along with other cities and towns across the country, will continue, regardless of what the federal government doesn't do, to take steps to address what we do believe is the very real, serious issue of climate change. And so actions like the one we discussed earlier in the public hearing, but other steps that we can take to reduce automobile travel, to reduce the power load in this building, and others are all things that we can do and have to do, really, to meet the commitments that have been made to reduce fossil fuel consumption by really dramatic numbers. But even then, as you say, we could, if we met all those goals tomorrow, the momentum, the carbon, the buildup of CO2, and all the other changes that are past activities, and make no mistake, there's an overwhelming consensus of scientists that at the very least, in part, it is human created, And those actions we could stop today, but the actions of the past years and decades will continue to have an impact. We'll be able to, it's sort of like the smoker's lungs. You stop smoking, your lung doesn't clear up today. It begins to clear up, and it will begin to have an impact on our environment. But we're going to bear the cost in Glacier National Park and Denali and towns like Brighton that experience years of drought and years of rainfall in succession are going to bear the impacts of that, even if we change our policies today. But we can't not change those policies today. So, thank you. Matters of the clerk.
Nothing.
No happy news for us. Okay.
Waking back up.
Matters of the town board. Now, Louise, if you'd like to talk about the upcoming recycling events.
October 14th will be the shredding and electronics recycling from 9 to 12 at the Ops Center. And October 28th will be the pharmaceutical take back from 10 to 2 here on the police side of the town hall complex.
Thank you. Be hearing more about those great events. Any other matters of the town board? Hearing none, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Dan, please call the roll.
Councilmember Vogel?
Aye.
Councilmember Novros?
Aye.
Councilmember DePonzio?
Aye.
Councilmember Werner?
Aye.
Supervisor Manley?
Aye. Thank you, everybody who was here tonight and participated. Our next meeting is September 13th at 7 p.m. Have a great evening.